Chapter 993. The entire heaven burial forest was filled with a violent aura. That kind of fluctuation was indescribable. Jun Xiaoyaro was like a chaos god of war who went all out. With the everlasting sword embryo in his left hand and the god's weeping war halberd in his right hand, the primal chaos splitting heavens behind his back, his entire body blazing with the blood of a supreme being. Kill! An astonishing murderous roar burst forth from Jun Xiaoyao's mouth. Clanging sounds reverberated, the heaven and earth shook, the stars shuddered, and the heavens trembled. Boom! Vast divine power swept through the universe, causing the stars in the sky to fall one by one, turning them into a meteor shower. In the void, all kinds of large cracks were spreading, and chaotic spatial turbulence swept through the surroundings. Retreat! The surrounding geniuses of the immortal realms were shocked and hurriedly retreated. However, many of them were directly swallowed into the spatial cracks. Amidst the collision of such extreme moves, Kang Li, Yarou Qing, Xing Lu, and the other successors of immortal heritage who were slightly weaker screamed in agony. Without the slightest ability to resist, his fleshly body was torn apart by the torrent of magic power. Even his primordial spirit was destroyed, turning into nothingness. The Ascension King's body trembled intensely as he retreated 1,000 feet back. He spat out a mouthful of blood which dyed his snow-white cloak red. Gu Tiez's figure also retreated rapidly, and even the Fushi Dragon Monument brand was pushed back. The impact caused Gu Tiez's blood and qi to churn in his chest, and he coughed up blood continuously. Damn it, this chaos body. Gu Tiez's chin was dripping with blood and he looked a little battered. He felt that he was really unlucky. He had been crushed by Jun Xiaoyaro in the ancient final road and the divine ruins. Now, in the desolate border battlefield, he was being suppressed by the foreign chaotic body. It was more than just tragic. Ling Yang, Prince of White Bones, and Holy Yama were slightly better off. After all, Ling Yang had the support of the Celestial Emperor's throne, so he was only slightly injured. A line of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. No matter what, the Prince of Bones and the Holy Yama were seed-level prodigies. However, their injuries weren't light either. Their eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Even an encirclement like this can't deal with him. The Holy Yama had a bad feeling about this. At this moment, a blurry figure tore through the void. A dark golden halberd sliced through the heavens and came crashing down toward the Holy Yama. How dare you! The Holy Yama was infuriated. They were originally here to encircle the chaos body. In the end, he was encircled by the chaotic body alone. If news of this were to spread, how humiliating would it be? Boom! The Holy Yama's hand imbued with the power of the Yama's hand clashed with the god's weeping halberd. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes blossomed with chaotic divine light as the power of the fourth supreme art bolstered his body. In addition, he had the fiend god's strength divine ability. His power instantly exploded. Poochie. As the halberd descended, the arm of the Holy Yama that was wearing the hand of Yama was directly severed. Blood splashed across the sky. At the same time, a dazzling sword light suddenly flew out from behind and pierced through Yama's chest. Jun Xiaoyaro took a step forward and stomped on the chest of the Yama King. Crack! The Yama King's physical body crumbled under this stomp. The sword light of the Deluo sword embryo drew a dazzling sword light and destroyed the primordial spirit of the Yama King. He couldn't even escape. The Yama King of the Nether King bloodline had fallen. When the immortal region's sky prides saw this, they felt as though a bucket of cold water had been poured over their hearts. A seed-level supreme being could be easily killed. The alien chaotic body was terrifying. Retreat. When Gu Tiezi saw this, he frowned and immediately retreated. He was such a person who was good at scheming. If the encirclement was successful, he would naturally be the first to charge forward and seize the battle credit. However, if the situation wasn't good, Gu Tiezi would definitely be the first to retreat. When the Ascendant King saw him retreat, he also retreated. When Ling Yang saw this, her beautiful eyes flickered. She glanced at Jun Xiaoyaro and also retreated. When the Prince of Bones saw this, he cursed in his heart. His plan to seize the primordial chaos blood essence and primordial chaos source had failed. He also wanted to retreat, But in the end, he realized that Zhang Xiaoyao's figure instantly flashed over. Why? The Prince of Bones's eyes twitched. Why did this otherworldly chaotic body target him? Zhang Xiaoyao naturally wouldn't waste any time talking nonsense with the Prince of Bones. He didn't have the slightest good impression of the sacred Spirit Island's immortal force. Zhang Xiaoyao's body was wrapped in the paragon divine blood, which burned brilliantly like divine flames, enhancing all his attributes. When he brandished the god's weeping war halberd, he was like a war god of the alien domain. A wave of destructive power shook the surroundings. Originally, when they surrounded Zhang Xiaoyao, they couldn't deal with him. Now, in a one-on-one battle, the Prince of Bones was even more unlikely to be Zhang Xiaoyao's match. When the halberd struck, the Prince of Bones's body was penetrated, and his primordial spirit was destroyed. He couldn't be more dead. He looked around and realized that most of the immortal region's sky prides had fled. Even Long Yarrow secretly ran away. But Zhang Xiaoyao didn't care. When he returned to the immortal region, Long Yarrow wouldn't be able to escape the fate of being a little bitch. As for Jiyu Tiezi and the Ascendant King, Zhang Xiaoyao could actually chase after them. But he didn't do so. The reason was simple. Zhang Xiaoyao wanted to wait until he returned to the immortal region before putting them on trial. At that time, he would see the enemies that he had meticulously schemed against. Not only were they not dead, but they were also alive and well. They had even become stronger and made great contributions. At that time, what would Jiyu Tiezi feel in his heart? Zhang Xiaoyao's standard had always been to kill people and destroy their hearts. If he only killed Jiyu Tiezi, wouldn't that be letting him off too easily? Next, let's go to the grand sacrificial blood ground. Zhang Xiaoyao confirmed his next target. Then, Zhang Xiaoyao seemed to have noticed something. He chuckled and didn't care. After Zhang Xiaoyao left, the entire heaven burial forest was in a mess. After a while, a beautiful figure in a green robe appeared in the void. It was Ji Qingyi. She looked at the messy heaven burial forest and the corpses of the holy Yama and the others. Her limpid eyes flashed with a solemn and contemplative look. As expected, they still can't deal with him. Who exactly is he? Could it really be him? But how is it possible? This doesn't make sense at all. Even Theurches can't completely hide their karma and even hide it from the heavenly Tao. How could he do it? But if it isn't him, his bearing and the way he does things are too similar. Ji Qingyi racked her brains to think. But no matter how hard she thought, she couldn't think of Zhang Xiaoyao as a transmigrator. He was born with the void physique. In addition, Zhang Xiaoyao had schemed in the world of divine ruins. No matter how smart Ji Qingyi was, she couldn't completely guess it. It could be said that in front of Zhang Xiaoyao, who was as smart as a ghost, Ji Qingyi's intelligence was only so. However, she suspected that there was a possible connection between Zhang Xiaoyao and the alien chaotic body. He was already much stronger than the others. After all, those people wouldn't even think about such a ridiculous thing. Regardless of whether it is him or not, he is indeed very powerful. I am curious. If he and the immortal chaotic body were to clash, who would be stronger? Ji Qingyi's eyes were deep as she turned around and left. The scar left by Zhang Xiaoyao on her face was still slightly hot. On the other side, Zhang Xiaoyao stepped into the void. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. Behind him, a figure of unparalleled beauty appeared. It was Ling Yuan, who had left and returned. Who exactly are you? Ling Yang's bright eyes stared at Zhang Xiaoyao's back. There was even a hint of nervousness and anticipation in her eyes. Chapter 994. Under the ghost mask, Zhang Xiaoyao's expression was calm. He wasn't surprised. Now, Ling Yang was no longer just Ling Yang. Her thoughts were also extremely meticulous. But unfortunately, Zhang Xiaoyao couldn't reveal his identity to the cultivators of the immortal realm. He didn't even reveal it to Princess Longji and the others. Not to mention Ling Yang, who belonged to the Xian Ting. Therefore, in the face of Ling Yang's questioning, Zhang Xiaoyao said indifferently in a low and magnetic voice, "You're really brave. Aren't you afraid that I'll get the Xian Ting to change the young emperor?" Hearing Zhang Xiaoyao's words, Ling Yang's expression didn't change at all. At this moment, she was like a stubborn young girl. She only wanted an answer. Tell me, who are you? That sense of familiarity, that invincible white-robed figure. Ling Yang's heart trembled slightly. She didn't know if it was because of her or Fairy Yuan. Or perhaps, both. Under the starry sky of the desolate border, in the desolate Gobi Desert. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't turn around, nor did he look back. He only said a few words. Is it that important who I am? No matter what, we are enemies. Jun Xiaoyao's words weren't wrong. Regardless of whether he had the exotic chaotic body or the son of God of the Jun family, he was enemies with Ling Yang. In this way, what was the difference who he was? Hearing Jun Xiaoyao's words, Ling Yang's delicate body suddenly trembled. She bit her lip tightly. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped forward and left. He wouldn't directly reveal his identity to Ling Yang. Even so, it might make Ling Yang's heart even more tormented. Looking at Jun Xiaoyao's back view as he left, Ling Yang suddenly realized that her snow-white cheeks were moist. A teardrop rolled down her face. Only then did she understand that what she actually cared about was not whether that figure was Jun Xiaoyaro or not. Instead, she was missing him. Even though he had been dead for many years, she still missed him. This had nothing to do with whether she was Ling Yang or Fairy Maiden Yuan. Even without Fairy Maiden Yuan's soul, Ling Yang would still be like this. Under the black abyss, the entanglement of 100 generations of love. Within the valley where the pink lotus of joy was sealed, the two of them were enveloped by the lover's flower. Love flowers for a day, yearning for 1,000 years. And on her snow-white thighs, there was still a mark of the word Jun. After going through so much with Jun Xiaoyao, Ling Yang could no longer treat him simply as an opponent. Perhaps, unknowingly, she had already fallen for it. Ling Yang raised her jade-like hand and wiped away a strand of tears on her face. She regained her composure. She believed that if it was really him, he would definitely return. If not, Ling Yang would probably be lonely for the rest of his life. She would always be the high and mighty, yet emotionless young empress. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyaro was strolling in the rift. Compared to Ling Yang, he was very calm. After all, to some extent, men were calmer and more rational than women when it came to relationships. Big brother, I think she's from the Xian Ting. The little divine demon ant on Jun Xiaoyao's shoulder said. It recognized the Heaven Emperor's throne too. It was a peerless immortal weapon that belonged to the Xian Ting. That's right, she's the current young empress of the Xian Ting, Jun Xiaoyaro said. But she's... The little divine demon ant was confused. His father had mentioned that the Jun clan had always wanted to compete with the Xian Ting to become the ruler of the Nine Heavens immortal realm. The two factions were supposed to be on opposing sides. However, the young empress of the Xian Ting was interested in the son of God of the Jun clan. It was very strange. A woman's heart is like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. Relationships are mostly fictitious. Little Yi, you're still young. It's too complicated for you to grasp the situation, Jun Xiaoyaro said calmly. Only he could grasp the situation. Otherwise, he would not have been able to control Luo Xiangling so easily. That being said, he did not need to teach the little divine demon ant how to behave. He did not want to lead it astray. The little divine demon ant nodded slightly and said, "Where are we going next?" The grand sacrificial ground. Jun Xiaoyaro glanced into the distance. He was a little confused. The Blood Emperor, Prince Ji Meng, and the others had yet to make their move. Previously, he could feel that those people seemed to have some ill intentions towards him. It seems like there's going to be a good show at the Grand Sacrificial Ground. Jun Xiaoyaro had a thoughtful look. He had a feeling that he was going to reap great benefits at the Grand Sacrificial Ground. Jun Xiaoyaro brought the little divine demon ant and headed toward the Grand Sacrificial Ground. The Grand Sacrificial Ground was a forbidden area in the borderland. It had been in a lot of trouble lately. It was the main battlefield where the prodigies of the two worlds fought. The ground around the Grand Sacrificial Ground was red. It was unknown if it was the color of the sand itself or if it was dyed red by the endless blood. During this period of time, the prodigies of the two worlds fought around the Grand Sacrificial Ground. However, they were unable to go deep. The blood of the fallen prodigies seeped into the ground, and it seemed to have caused some kind of reaction. In a certain area at the edge of the grand sacrificial ground, several prodigies of the immortal region advanced cautiously. Suddenly, a red figure charged towards them as fast as lightning. "You're courting death." The prodigies of the immortal region reacted and used their dharmic powers. Swoosh! A cold light flashed. Blood lines appeared on the necks of those prodigies of the immortal region. Then, with a spurt, blood splattered everywhere. Their primordial spirits were destroyed in an instant. The red figure stopped and revealed herself. It was Su Hongi. She was wearing a fiery red dress, and her figure was a little thin. Her black hair was very long, like a waterfall. She had a fair and clean face. Although she hadn't reached the level of being devastatingly beautiful, she was still a beauty. Her hair fell on her forehead, slightly covering her blood-red eyes. She looked like a girl next door. However, the way she killed people and the coldness in her red eyes didn't match her appearance. Only in front of Jun Xiaoyao was she the girl who felt inferior and sensitive and wanted to desperately obtain Jun Xiaoyao's approval. In front of everyone else, she was as cold as ice. "I can feel that my power is getting stronger and stronger. The stronger I am, the more I can help young master." Su Hongi lowered her head and looked at her blood-stained hands. She didn't feel uncomfortable or conflicted at all. Instead, she was very happy. She was happy that she could become stronger and help Jun Xiaoyao. Rumble. At this moment, the sky in front of the grand sacrificial ground seemed to crack. Blood light shone. Everyone around the great sacrificial blood ground saw something seeping out of the crack. "Blood, that's blood." Some of the prodigies shouted with a pale face. Thick blood seeped out of the crack in the sky above the grand sacrificial ground. Vaguely, the cries of various vengeful spirits could be heard. This made the prodigies' hair stand on end, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. As expected of a forbidden ground in the desolate border. It was indeed a little strange. However, Su Hongi suddenly had an inexplicable feeling. She felt that the star-shaped birthmark under her belly button was burning. Her blood-red eyes seemed to be surging with a boundless sea of blood. They became brighter, more demonic, and more ghostly. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Su Hongi shot toward the grand sacrificial ground like an arrow. At the same time, on the other side, a group of powerful seed-level prodigies had gathered here. "The grand sacrificial ground has finally opened. We need to go in and wait." A stalwart man with a golden dragon aura around him and a golden dragon king spear in his hand said. He was the Dragon King Palace's seed-level prodigy, Xian Haoqiong. However, that chaotic body isn't that easy to deal with. I heard that the divine Silkworm Valley's Tian Kanzi died at the hands of the chaotic body. Later on, the Holy Yama and the others joined forces with the Xian Ting to attack the chaotic body, but they also suffered a crushing defeat. A woman with an extremely charming figure and a pair of rainbow-colored wings on her snow-white back said. She was the Archean royalty's seed-level prodigy of the demonic Phoenix ancient cave. Her name was Phoenix Maiden. If we enter the grand sacrificial ground early, we can join forces. With the 9th Archean killing formation, I don't believe that we can't kill that chaotic body. A brawny man enveloped in the divine sun flame walked over with boundless radiance as he spoke in a resolute tone. His entire being seemed to be enveloped by a sun, incomparably dazzling and shining brightly. It was the Sun God Mountain's Golden Crow Junior Sacred King. In addition, there were more than 10 seed-level prodigies with powerful auras gathered here. However, they all had one thing in common. They were all Archean royalty's seed-level prodigies. Chapter 995. The Archean royalty was a formidable force in the Nine Heavens Immortal Realm. It once ruled the Nine Heavens Immortal Realm during the Primordial Age. Apart from the Jun family, the Xian Ting, the Underworld, and a few other ancient factions that had existed for countless eras. Most of the Immortal Realm factions could only be considered as younger factions compared to the Archean royalty. As such, the Archean royalty was a force to be reckoned with. At this moment, more than 10 seed-level prodigies from the Archean theocrats had gathered together to form the execution team. Their target was none other than Jun Xiaoyao, the golden crow young sacred king of the sun god mountain, the phoenix girl of the ancient cave of the demon phoenix, Xian Haoqiong of the Dragon King Palace, the successor of the Nine Serenities Ao of the Nine Serenities Mountain. Each of them was a formidable existence in the Nine Heavens immortal realm. They had stirred up a huge commotion when they were born. Many of the older generation believed that these prodigies were the hope for the Archean royalty to rise in this era. Now, more than 10 prodigies of the Archean royalty had teamed up. It was a grand occasion. No one in the younger generation was worthy of being dealt with by more than 10 prodigies of the Archean royalty. Jun Xiaoyao was the first. Even if that primal chaos physique is dead, it's enough to make us go through so much trouble to hunt him down, the successor of the Nine Serenities Ao said coldly. He was not in his human form, but his beast form. He had the head of a wolf and the horns of a bull. His body was covered in black scales, and he had 9 tails with a ferocious beast head at the end. The Nine Serenities Ao was one of the ferocious beasts in the primordial age. The Nine Serenities Mountain was an Archean royalty faction formed by the Nine Serenities Ao. However, the successor of the Nine Serenities Ao's bloodline was not as pure as the little divine demon ants. Although it was also a descendant of the Nine Serenities Ao, it was a few generations away. It was not a direct monarch bloodline like the little divine demon ant. Even so, the successor of the Nine Serenities Ao was not to be underestimated. Let's head straight to the depths of the blood ritual ground. I heard that this place is the treasure left behind by the Immortal of Darkness. That primal chaos physique won't miss out on it. Xian Haoqiong said. What's the reward for killing a chaotic body? This is definitely a great achievement. It will affect the structure of the 2 worlds in the future. These primordial theocrats had yet to truly kill the chaotic body, but they were already imagining a beautiful future in their minds. They formed an execution team and began to venture deeper into the great sacrificial blood ground. They weren't the only ones. The other prodigies of the 2 worlds also began to venture deeper. While the Archean royalty execution team was deep in the great blood sacrifice. On the other side, Jun Xiaoyao had finally arrived at the great blood sacrifice. He looked at the crack in the sky and the blood that was seeping out. Jun Xiaoyao clicked his tongue. Sure enough, there was not a single place in the desolate border that was good. I can feel a very terrifying aura inside. On Jun Xiaoyao's shoulder, the antennae of the little divine demon ant trembled slightly. Its ant sense had detected the strangeness and inauspiciousness of the blood sacrificial ground. I heard that this place is the burial ground of a dark immortal from the other world. It's quite interesting that there are treasures that belong to him. The word fear didn't exist in Jun Xiaoyao's dictionary. Jun Xiaoyao was not afraid of the immortal realm's 7 unfathomable realms at all. In the future, Jun Xiaoyao even wanted to explore the unspeakable lands of the other world. What was a mere great blood sacrifice to Jun Xiaoyao? He put his hands behind his back, took a step, and entered. The great blood sacrifice was still a boundless crimson red. The ground looked as if it was dyed in fresh blood. It was a bright red color. At this moment, there was a whimpering sound in the surroundings. Chilly winds blew, and endless cries of ghosts and wolves could be heard. Suddenly, black mist surged on the blood-stained ground. Twisted vengeful spirits with soul fluctuations appeared one after another. Those vengeful spirits were emitting endless resentment. Countless painful faces alternated on their surfaces, as if they were undead spirits burning in a raging fire. This is. If other cultivators saw this scene, they would definitely feel a chill down their spines. However, Jun Xiaoyao was curious. His vision was extraordinary, and he recognized the source. They seemed to be earthbound spirits. The so-called earthbound spirits were because of some reason, their resentment would not be extinguished for tens of thousands of years. They gathered in one place and could not leave, becoming bloodthirsty demons and evil spirits. And this great blood sacrifice, just from the name, definitely represented some kind of killing and inauspicious. These earthbound spirits could not leave the great blood sacrifice and were forever bound here. Instead, they became guardians. The strength of the earthbound spirits was directly proportional to their resentment and hatred. And now, any one of these earthbound spirits that appeared had the cultivation of a saint. It was no wonder that the great blood sacrifice could become one of the forbidden areas in the desolate border. This was indeed not something that ordinary people could pass through. But for Jun Xiaoyaro, this was not difficult. The chaotic aura around him surged, sweeping out like a vast ocean, drowning everything. The surrounding earthbound spirits were directly annihilated in the chaotic waves. Jun Xiaoyaro pushed his way in. The deeper he went, the more the scene changed. The ground split open into abyss-like cracks. There were many star remains inside. Not a single blade of grass grew inside. It was obvious that this great blood sacrifice ground had experienced an incomparably tragic and vast battle. It completely destroyed the life force of this place. Back then, an emperor-level battle definitely erupted here. Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. There should have been immortal realm emperors and foreign undying beings fighting here. The more this was the case, the more curious Jun Xiaoyaro was. What kind of secrets were hidden in this great blood sacrifice ground? Jun Xiaoyaro continued to go deeper. Then, he encountered several powerful earthbound spirits comparable to supreme beings. It could be said that even if an immortal realm seed and a foreign imperial prince encountered them, they would probably not have a good time and would have to go through a bitter battle. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, simply pushed his way forward, crushing all of them with brute force. Not to mention, Jun Xiaoyaro had an essence soul technique like Mahavirokana, which could cause great damage to those vengeful spirits. Finally, Jun Xiaoyaro completely entered the depths of the great blood sacrifice ground. With a single glance, a giant white bone mountain that was more than 100,000 zhong tall stood in the depths of the great blood sacrifice ground. 10,000 li of crimson sand, only the giant white bone mountain towered. This scene was extremely shocking, shocking one's eyes. And on the giant white bone mountain, there was a black ancient tablet. In front of the ancient tablet, there was a cluster of blood-colored flowers. Jun Xiaoyaro focused his eyes. That ancient tablet was extremely ancient. And that cluster of flowers was a blood-colored datura flower. One had to know that there was no life force in the great blood sacrifice ground. However, there was a blood-colored datura flower growing beside the black ancient tablet. This was puzzling and terrifying. Jun Xiaoyaro could also feel that the blood-colored datura flower contained extremely vigorous energy and the power of laws. It was even stronger than the myriad spirit blood medicine that Jun Xiaoyaro obtained before. This was definitely much more precious than the immortal medicine. For those who wanted to break through to supreme being, it was an incomparable supreme treasure. Datura flower. The datura flower was not the other Shore flower, so it had nothing to do with the other Shore emperor clan. This flower was a poisonous flower that represented vengeance and obsession. Jun Xiaoyaro was thinking about which foreign race was related to the datura flower. But after thinking about it, he couldn't think of anything. At least, there didn't seem to be any in the foreign realm. Could it be a certain ancient foreign race that was annihilated in history? Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. Suddenly, his gaze landed on the giant white bone mountain. When he looked carefully again, Jun Xiaoyao's breathing became slightly sluggish. That giant white bone mountain, when looked at from afar, it was actually a giant head. Chapter 996. At first, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't notice it. Now that he took a closer look, he was surprised to find that the enormous mountain of bones was actually a white skull. It was creepy and made one's scalp tingle. Just the skull alone was tens of thousands of feet tall, comparable to a giant mountain. To a certain extent, size and strength were directly proportional. Could this skull be the Dark Immortal who died here? Jun Xiaoyaro frowned. Suddenly, he noticed something else. There was a blurry mark on the skull's forehead. Upon closer inspection, it looked like a blurry hexagram mark. The 6 Armageddon Kings? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes trembled slightly. Previously, War God Academy's elder Mu only told him that there was a foreign immortal king who died in the great sacrificial blood ground. But he didn't say it was the 6 Armageddon Kings. Jun Xiaoyaro had only just found out about it. He also noticed that the god's weeping war halberd in the spatial artifact also began to tremble slightly. Its surface was covered with a layer of bloodlight, flickering between inhaling and exhaling. Jun Xiaoyaro was even more curious. He walked directly to the top of the skull, where the black ancient tablet and the blood-colored datura flower were. How terrifying! This is some kind of great omen. On his shoulder, the little divine demon ant trembled slightly. Its ant senses didn't dare to probe the black ancient tablet at all. It directly shrank into Jun Xiaoyao's sleeve. Jun Xiaoyaro waved his hand and collected the blood-colored datura flower around the ancient tablet. The blood-colored datura flower and the 10,000 spirit blood medicine. In addition, there were the celestial fruits on the celestial tree in the innerverse. These resources were enough to help Jun Xiaoyaro condense the laws of the physical body and break through to the true supremacy realm. However, what piqued Jun Xiao's interest was the black ancient tablet. He glanced at it. There were many messages written in ancient characters on it. At the very beginning were 7 bloody ancient characters. Hate, 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 hate. It looked like it was written with blood. The 7 words hate seemed to be accusing this side of the world, accusing all living beings, and also accusing fate. Was this left behind by the owner of the skull? Jun Xiaoyaro pondered. What exactly did the King of Annihilation go through to write these words? Next, a picture was engraved at the bottom. Amidst the dense black clouds, a dark figure that resembled both a Buddha and a demon descended upon the earth. Like a primordial demon god, his body pressed down on the world. A pair of blood-red eyes hung in the sky like blood lanterns. And around this demon god, there were also blood-red datura flowers blooming. On the ground, countless living beings trembled like ants. It was as if they were in the 18 levels of purgatory. This was a scene of the demonic god sacrificing all living beings. Below it, there was an extremely complicated ancient text. Even with Jun Xiaoyao's vision and wisdom, it would be difficult to comprehend it in a short period of time. However, he was sure that this was a sacrificial text for the blood sacrifice of all living beings. Among them, Jun Xiaoyaro captured some information. Mahakala, Jun Xiaoyaro muttered these 3 words. He had once read about it in the Ars Academy's library. This seemed to be a clan that was drowned in ancient history. However, there were too few records about this clan, and not much information was passed down. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at this universal sacrificial text. The more he looked, the more surprised he became. Blood sacrifice of all living beings. This should be the core inheritance of this emperor clan. As everyone knew, the foreign emperor clans all had their own core inheritances and innate abilities. For example, the infernal eye of the infernal emperor clan, the magic power immunity of the Maurya emperor clan, and so on. And the blood sacrifice of all living beings should be the core ability of this emperor clan. It was also the so-called power of sacrifice. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were very bright and resplendent. There seemed to be all kinds of runes interweaving in them. Vaguely, his spiritual perception was triggered. In the past, Jun Xiaoyaro would have to spend a lot of effort to comprehend this universal sacrificial text. However, with the Ars catalogue, Jun Xiaoyaro could comprehend it in a short period of time. Jun Xiaoyaro had a premonition. If he could completely comprehend this universal sacrificial text, he would be able to comprehend the essence of this emperor clan. Then, he would modify it and integrate it into his origin great Tao mystique. Genesis. It would form the 3rd move. Genesis was Jun Xiaoyao's blood, sweat, and tears. Without inspiration, Jun Xiaoyaro wouldn't force himself to create an imperfect move. It was precisely because of this strict pursuit of perfection that the Genesis era had only been able to learn 2 moves so far. God's light. God's punishment. Jun Xiaoyaro wanted to make use of this universal sacrificial text to comprehend an even more terrifying move. It would definitely surpass God's light, God's punishment, and even the fusion of light and darkness. After making up his mind, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't hesitate and started to prepare. However, this time, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't just want to comprehend the 3rd move of Genesis. He also wanted to break through to the supremacy stage. Therefore, he couldn't be too short. He also needed to be focused and not be disturbed. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand, and sealing runes surged. He set up the fourth seal around the mountain of bones, the forbidden space. He sealed this space and prevented it from being disturbed by external forces. In addition, Jun Xiaoyaro also activated 15 layers of magic immunity divine rings, which enveloped the entire space. Even if a seed-level character wants to break through, it won't be possible in a short time. After setting up the seal, Jun Xiaoyaro sat cross-legged in front of the black ancient tablet. He took out the heavenly immortal fruit, the myriad spirit blood herb, and the bloody datura flower from the inner universe. There were also many other resources, such as the elixir of immortality, immortal source, and so on. As the war god of the Ars Academy, the resources Jun Xiaoyaro received were extremely terrifying. As for the lesser divine demon ant, Jun Xiaoyaro threw it into the inner universe. It had the world tree, evolved into the dust world, and the laws were preliminary. It could already allow life to exist. Of course, it couldn't be like the real outside world for now. After making all the preparations, Jun Xiaoyaro began to cultivate and comprehend. In the blink of an eye, 7 days passed. In another part of the blood sacrifice grounds, Su Hongyi walked through it. There seemed to be a thread that pulled her into the depths of the blood sacrifice grounds. What is it? Su Hongyi was puzzled. She didn't know anything about her background. Ever since he had consciousness, he had been adopted by a servile couple. She didn't know who her parents were, nor did she know which tribe she came from. She didn't deliberately hide anything from Jun Xiaoyaro. But now, Su Hongyi's heart was thumping. She vaguely felt that she seemed to be close to some kind of truth. There was a black fog surging ahead. The earthbound spirits had appeared. Just as these earthbound spirits appeared, Su Hongyi's delicate body shook inexplicably. The power of the curse, which had been suppressed by Jun Xiaoyaro, seemed to have been drawn by something. It began to churn and become restless. The earthbound spirit's cold and treacherous eyes instantly locked onto Su Hongyi. Then, they all pounced on Su Hongyi. There was no trace of fear on Su Hongyi's fair little face. Her blood-red eyes seemed to have become brighter. It was the young master who saved Hongyi's life. Hongyi has almost died once. Why would I be afraid of you? Su Hongyi didn't realize that when she was obsessed with something in her heart. Suddenly, a blood-red datura flower bloomed in his blood-red eyes. The moment the blood-red datura flower appeared in Su Hongyi's eyes, the earthbound spirits were terrified as if they had seen something even more terrifying than them. One by one, they turned into black smoke and dissipated. This made Su Hongyi, who was about to use force, stunned. However, this abnormal scene made Su Hongyi even more certain that there must be some secret related to her in the depths of the great sacrificial bloodground. Su Hongyi continued to go deeper. Because of the blood-red datura flower in her eyes, she didn't encounter any obstacles along the way. Even the king of earthbound spirits at the supreme level didn't dare to approach Su Hongyi. Of course, the other prodigies who went deep into the great sacrificial bloodground weren't as lucky as Su Hongyi. However, there were some experts who were extremely fast and quickly entered the depths. For example, the Otherworld Prince, Blood Emperor, Prince Ji Meng, and the others formed a hunting team. While hunting many prodigies from the immortal region, they also quickly advanced into the depths of the great sacrificial bloodground. On the immortal region's side, the execution team formed by the Archean royalty also quickly entered the depths. Hey, look, that's Dragon King Palace's Shen Haoqiong's golden eyes seemed to be made of gold as they shot out divine light, looking at the giant white bone mountain in the distance. Found it, it's him. A group of Archean royalty prodigies locked their gazes. Chapter 997. It's really the chaotic Physique. He's already here. The Archean royalty prodigies were surprised when they saw the white-robed figure on the white bone mountain. They had wanted to enter in advance to prepare the killing formation. However, their prey had entered first. He's alone, but he's faster than us. Some Archean royalty prodigies noticed this. This proved how terrifying the chaotic Physique was. He had entered the depths of the blood sacrifice grounds alone. One had to know that there were utmost exalted level earthen-bound spirit kings everywhere. Even the decapitation team had to spend a lot of time to get in. He's not in the right state. Is he breaking through? Zhang Xiaoyao's state attracted the attention of these seed-level prodigies. Ha, he dares to break through in such a place. Is he courting death? The 9 Gloom Ape's successor grinned, revealing his white canine teeth. He activated his divine power, and the 9 tails on his back vibrated. The 9 heads at the end opened their mouths and shot out a purple demonic light. This was the 9 Gloom demonic light. It was extremely terrifying. If one was hit by it, their body and soul would be destroyed. However, the moment the 9 Gloom demonic light approached the White Bone Mountain, it was blocked by an invisible space. After being weakened by the 15 layers of magic immunity divine rings, almost all of its power was absorbed. It was as if it had hit cotton, and it did not cause any ripples. This, the 9 Gloom Ape's successor, was slightly stunned, and he was a little embarrassed. Let me do it. Xian Haoqiong made his move. He held the Golden Dragon King spear in his hand, and a dragon-shaped shadow wrapped around the spear. It rose into the air and roared. However, this spear was still useless. Its power was weakened. That's the Morgia royalty's magic immunity ability. In addition, they have spatial defense methods, the Golden Crow young Sacred King said calmly. There's no need to do that. Just set up the 9th ancient killing formation. When the time comes, even if the chaotic physique resists, it won't be a problem, the Phoenix Maiden said. That's right. Just set up the killing formation and trap it inside. Kill it and refine it, the Golden Crow young Sacred King said. The Archean royalty prodigies began to move. They each took out a corner of the formation and placed it in different corners of the White Bone Mountain. In an instant, a terrifying aura spread out. Since ancient times, it was the 9th most terrifying killing formation. Of course, this could not be completely true. A truly complete 9th archaic killing formation would require a massive amount of resources and a top-notch expert to control it. Even though the Golden Crow Little Holy King and the others were young primes, they were still unable to control the complete 9th killing formation. Therefore, this could only be considered a simplified version of the 9th ancient killing formation. However, even if it was a simplified version, it was still more than enough to kill Supreme Being level characters. It was like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. At this moment, a few more scattered figures appeared in the distance. They were some half-emperor clans from the other side, as well as heavenly talents from emperor clans. That is, the war god. Damn it, how dare you plot against Lord Battle God? He saw the Golden Crow Little Sacred King and the others setting up the array. The eyes of the foreign prodigies surged with killing intent as they charged over. The current Zhang Xiaoyaro could be said to be the benchmark and hero in the hearts of the foreign younger generation. Naturally, they couldn't just watch as Zhang Xiaoyaro was besieged. HMPH, who can stop him? An Archean royalty seed sneered and raised his hand to attack. They didn't care about those who weren't true Emperor clan princes and heavenly daughters at all. On the other side, some immortal realm prodigies also appeared and fought with the foreign prodigies. This place immediately became chaotic, turning into a bloody battlefield. Zhang Xiaoyaro, who was at the center of the storm, naturally sensed all of this. However, he didn't do anything. Instead, he focused on cultivating and comprehending. To him, his goal this time was to break through to the Supreme Being level and obtain great opportunities. Compared to this, he didn't care about anything else. As for the 9th archaic killing formation, to be honest, Zhang Xiaoyaro really didn't care about it. He got rid of all distracting thoughts and continued to comprehend. On this side, the formation was still being set up. Xian Haoqiong and the others set up the formation while attacking. They wanted to break through the 4th seal and the defense of the Dharmic Power Immunity Divine Ring. They intended to harass Zhang Xiaoyaro and prevent him from comprehending. It would be best if he went berserk. In the distance, some immortal realm prodigies appeared again. Long Yarrow Feather King, Jiu Tiezi, and the others, who were in a sorry state previously, were all there. Ling Yang was also there. After they retreated from the Heaven Burial Forest, they learned about the opening of the blood sacrificial ground and came directly. This time, they learned their lesson and didn't go forward. Instead, they watched from afar. The ninth archaic killing formation wants to kill the chaotic body with this. Gu Tiez's expression darkened. He was too afraid of the chaotic body now. Unless there was hope of killing it, he definitely wouldn't go forward rashly. Long Yarrow still had lingering fear. That shame hadn't dissipated yet. As for Ling Yang, when she saw Jun Xiaoyaro in the center of the ninth archaic killing formation, she felt anxious. She didn't know why, but her heart tightened. However, she didn't go forward. If she helped the foreign chaotic body, she would definitely be crazy. She wouldn't even be able to become a young emperor. She would be seen as a traitor, and the consequences would be severe. On the other side, two figures appeared. They were Jun Qingyang and Jun Yinhuang. Only the Son of Heaven can deal with this chaotic body, Jun Yinhuang said with a frown. The Son of Heaven he was referring to was Jun Bieli of the Jun family's hidden branch. Of course, there was no such thing as the main branch and the hidden branch. The two branches had merged into one. They were also members of the Jun family who were sent to the desolate border to participate in the training. Not only the Son of Heaven, but if the Son of God is here, he should be able to deal with this chaotic body too. Jun Qingyang sighed softly. If the Son of Heaven and the Son of God were here, and Lord Grim, Jun Lingtsang, and some other dormant seeds of the Jun family were also here, how powerful would the younger generation of the Jun family be then? The past is the past. What's the point of talking about it now? Jun Yinhuang shook his head slightly. A few years had passed. Many people in the Jun family had given up on Jun Xiaoyaro, thinking that he was really gone. As for the thoughts of the higher-ups of the Jun family, the other family members naturally didn't know. At that moment, a fiery red figure attracted the attention of some geniuses from the immortal region. That was because that figure was directly charging towards the ancient theocrat's seed. A great saint dares to seek death. Some geniuses from the immortal region found it funny. That fiery red figure was naturally Su Hongyi, who had rushed over. During the training in the desolate border, Su Hongyi's cultivation had also reached the great saint realm from the sage realm. It was not that she had broken through so quickly. It was that some kind of power in her body was awakening quickly. At that moment, she saw the Golden Crow Little Sacred King and the others about to set up a formation to kill Jun Xiaoyaro. Su Hongyi naturally did not care about her own safety. Anyone who dares to disturb the young master's training will die. Su Hongyi's blood-red eyes emitted a demonic bloody light, and a blood-red datura flower vaguely appeared in them. She's the follower of the chaotic body? Xian Haoqiong asked. Mph, she's just a great saint. Even her master has to die, let alone her. The nine nether python's successor said coldly. The 9 tails on his back swung, and he was about to kill Su Hongyi. Wait, she's the follower of the chaotic body. What if we slowly torture his follower in front of him? Do you think that the chaotic body's Tao heart will become unstable, and he might even go berserk? The phoenix maiden from the demon phoenix ancient cave smiled. The rainbow wings on her back were shrouded in divine light, and she was extremely beautiful. However, the words he spoke were extremely vicious. That's a good idea. The Archean royalty geniuses nodded slightly. This was the appetizer before the feast. The phoenix maiden directly attacked. The rainbow wings on her back flapped, and the rainbow divine light turned into flying blades that shot towards Su Hongyi. A supreme stage expert would absolutely crush a great saint stage expert without any suspense. Continuous ripping sounds could be heard. It was the sound of flesh and bones being torn apart. Su Hongyi fell into a pool of blood. Chapter 998. Although great saints were very strong, they still had no power to resist in front of a true supremacy. It was already not easy for Su Hongyi to reach the great saint realm from a beggar. Unfortunately, when faced with these far ancient theocrat seeds, it was like an ant trying to shake a tree, or a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Su Hongyi fell into a pool of blood. She was already dressed in red, and now that her dress was soaked in blood, it made her look even more beautiful. She stood up from the pool of blood with difficulty. There were many lacerations on her body. One could even see the white bones in her body. Su Hongyi spat out a mouthful of blood, but she still stood in front of the mountain of white bones. Her thin body was like an indestructible iron wall, blocking in front of her master. Her tone was still cold as she said, "Unless Hongi dies, no one can disturb the young master." Hihi, what a loyal bitch. Seeing this, the Phoenix girl covered her red lips with her jade-like hands and giggled. She naturally did not use her full strength. Otherwise, she would have killed Su Hongi long ago. She did it on purpose. She wanted to torture Jun Xiaoyao's follower in front of him. It made him unable to calm down completely. It would disturb his cultivation and enlightenment. If he was not careful, he might even go berserk. If that was the case, the consequences would be serious. It would be normal for him to die. The Phoenix girl continued to attack. The 7 colored feathers turned into flying blades and swept out. In her eyes, Su Hongi was just a struggling ant. Splat! The sound of flesh being torn apart rang out. Su Hongi's 2 arms were cut off, and blood splattered in the sky. The blood dyed Su Hongi's long black hair red like a waterfall. Su Hongi was still standing and did not fall. However, this bloody scene made some of the cultivators on the Immortal Region's side frown. If you want to kill, just kill her. What's the point of torturing her like this? Jun Qingyang frowned. The 2 worlds were enemies, and killing was inevitable. However, she was a little disgusted by this kind of torture. Ling Yang also frowned when she saw this scene. If it were her, killing the other party with 1 palm strike might be a kind of mercy. This kind of torture was annoying. At this moment, several figures appeared in the darkness on the other side. Their auras were concealed very well, so no one noticed them. They were Prince Baian, Prince Jimeng, Prince Baian, and the others. Oh, looks like they've already made their move. That chaotic body is actually comprehending the Tao. Is he trying to break through? He's really ambitious. Under such circumstances, they should have made a move. Only they were qualified to compete with the prodigies of the Archean royalty. However, they did not do so. Instead, they observed the situation from the shadows. He was prepared to take advantage of the fight between the sandpiper and the clam. Let's wait and see. We'll reap the spoils later. If even they can't kill the chaotic body, we'll have to find an opportunity to do so, Prince Bayan said with a cold gaze. One person can make people from 2 worlds want to kill him. The chaotic body is really something. The Blood Emperor sneered. On this side, the Phoenix girl was still attacking like a cat playing with a mouse. Su Hongi's body was covered in wounds that were so deep that her bones could be seen. Even some of his internal organs could be vaguely seen. However, Su Hongi just did not fall. It was Jun Xiaoyao who saved her. Her life originally belonged to Jun Xiaoyao. She thought that Su Hongi would not have any regrets if she died for Jun Xiaoyao. That be *TCH. Seeing that Su Hongi did not fall, the Phoenix girl's face also had a look of displeasure. Then, she took action, activating a treasured fan woven from 7 colored true feathers. The fan flew out. A 1,000-foot-long 7-colored light blade swept out. It directly cut off Su Hongi's 2 legs. Su Hongi completely fell into a pool of blood. She, who had lost both her hands and feet, did not even have the ability to stand up. Master, I tried my best. It's all my fault. Due to the loss of blood, Su Hongi's consciousness began to blur. Even so, she was still talking about Jun Xiaoyao. What about Jun Xiaoyao? He was naturally aware of what was happening outside. However, his state of mind was very calm. He was not affected by Su Hongi's miserable state at all. There was no need to say more about Jun Xiaoyao's temperament. Even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, his expression would not change. Now, he needed to calm his mind and concentrate. He could not make any mistakes. Therefore, even though Su Hongi was in such a miserable state, Jun Xiaoyao still acted as if he did not hear anything. It was not because he was cold-blooded. It was because he could not fail now. Most importantly, there was one more thing. After comprehending the life-sacrificial oration, Jun Xiaoyao finally understood some of the truth. Su Hongi would not die. At least in the great blood sacrifice ground, she would not die. Therefore, Jun Xiaoyao was at ease and comprehended the life-sacrificial oration. Seeing that Su Hongyi was tortured to death did not affect Jun Xiaoyaro at all. The Phoenix Girl and the others were also uninterested. A few days later, the 9th archaic killing formation was completed. We finally succeeded. The chaotic physique is in the bag. The Golden Crow young sacred king's eyes shone brightly. Killing the chaotic physique is a major event in this era. His name will go down in history. Xian Haoqiong's tone was also a little excited. There was a shocking aura surging around the Whitebone Mountain. Even the Supremes could feel the smell of death. More than 10 Archean royalty prodigies were also in position. They each took a position and were ready to activate the 9th archaic killing formation. At this moment, rumble. Suddenly, a thunderous sound was heard. The sky of the desolate border was dark and gloomy. What's going on? Some prodigies looked up at the sky. Tribulation clouds were gathering in the dark universe. The fluctuations were extremely shocking. Could it be? Many people suddenly turned to look at Jun Xiaoyaro on the Whitebone Mountain. A strong sense of disbelief surged in his heart. The Golden Crow young sacred king, Xian Haoqiong, and the others also felt their hearts skip a beat. At the peak of the Whitebone Mountain, Jun Xiaoyaro slowly opened his eyes. Chaotic mist surged around his body, and a shocking aura spread out. The heavenly immortal fruit, myriad spirit blood medicine, and the blood-colored datura flower were all refined into his body. The rich power of laws entangled with the immortal qi in his body. It was as if they were recombined to form a complete set of laws. This set of laws completely belonged to Jun Xiaoyaro. It's here. Jun Xiaoyaro rose to his feet, and a boundless aura of might surged, covering the entire place. Everyone present, including the young supreme being, felt as if they couldn't breathe. Is he going to break through to the Supremes? But even if he breaks through to the Supremes, it's impossible for him to be so terrifying. Many people's faces were pale, and they were shouting. Rumble. Tribulation clouds surged in the universe. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the dark universe. Red, orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, purple. There were also black, white, and chaotic colors. All kinds of lightning tribulations were brewing. At the same time, there were also dense illusory figures appearing. They were like young supremes who had walked out of ancient history. That's the ultimate supremacy tribulation. Seeing the terrifying tribulation that covered the universe, the entire great sacrificial blood ground, and even the entire desolate border, all the living beings' pupils were trembling. Even the big shots of the two worlds noticed it. They were surprised and absent-minded. Chapter 999. To become a true supremacy, one had to pass the supremacy tribulation. Countless geniuses were crushed and turned into ashes in this tribulation. However, there were also a small number of people who could barely pass it. Moreover, according to the person transcending the tribulation, the supremacy tribulation was also divided into different levels. For example, the 39 heavenly tribulation, the 69 poverty tribulation, the 99 annihilation tribulation, and so on. The higher the level of the tribulation, the more difficult it was to pass. Of course, after passing it, one's strength would also be stronger. However, there was a kind of tribulation that had only happened a few times since ancient times. There was even very little information left behind. There were even many people who suspected if that kind of tribulation had existed before. That kind of tribulation was called the ultimate tribulation. This kind of tribulation was bombarded 10,000 times with 10,000 types of lightning. In addition, it would also manifest the phantom imprint left behind by the most powerful person transcending the tribulation since ancient times. That kind of person's achievements were at least emperors. There was no lack of people with even higher achievements. As for who could trigger this kind of tribulation, only people who were heaven-defying enough to affect the world and the order of all things could enjoy this kind of treatment. Such people existed in the world. If they broke through all the way, they would overturn the original order and rules of the world. Therefore, they needed a certain death tribulation to make them reach the end and unable to affect the world. This was the origin of the name of the ultimate tribulation. Triggering this tribulation was no different from dying 10 times. Oh my God, It's the ultimate tribulation. The chaotic body is actually so terrifying. Countless geniuses were a little stunned. This was the first time they had seen such a mysterious tribulation that only existed in ancient history. Thousands of types of lightning gathered in the vast universe. Countless phantoms of powerful people transcending the tribulation appeared in the void. The ultimate tribulation led people to the end. At this moment, everyone's hearts trembled. At the border, in the vast expanse, there were several blurry figures standing tall. They were quasi-emperors who guarded the border all year round. That's the foreign chaotic body. One of the 6 apocalyptic kings. He can't be underestimated. Do you still remember the disaster that the 6 apocalyptic kings brought to the border? The origin of that foreign chaotic body is difficult to detect. It's as if it has been erased. There are no traces. In order to be foolproof, we have to kill him. Can we invite that person? Let him take action. This may lead to big problems. There's no other way. The world destruction's 6 kings, and they have the primal chaos body. They can't exist in this world, or else the consequences would be unimaginable. The quasi-emperors overseeing the border communicated with their spiritual sense, their expressions grave. Meanwhile, in desolate border, at the great sacrificial bloodground side, the ultimate paragon tribulation was about to descend, shocking everyone. Retreat. Retreat quickly. Don't get involved. Xian Haoqiong shouted. That was the ultimate paragon tribulation. Even for seed-level figures like them, the highest number of tribulations they had experienced was only the 6-9 poor tribulations. Not even the 9-9 annihilation calamity was triggered. As for the ultimate paragon tribulation, he didn't even dare to think about it. Even if one had already become a supreme being dragged into such a calamity would only result in death. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless sounds of wind breaking could be heard as everyone in the surroundings retreated. The chaotic body will undoubtedly die. He cannot cross this type of tribulation, the Golden Crow young sacred king said. The might of this final paragon tribulation was much stronger than the simplified version of the 9th ancient killing formation that they had set up. Almost no one could survive it. As for Jun Xiaoyaro, his white robe fluttered, and his slender figure stood at the peak of the Whitebone Mountain. He didn't care about the Golden Crow young sacred king and the others. They were nothing but clowns. Ultimate paragon tribulation? Jun Xiaoyaro looked up at the universe. A heavenly tribulation of this level represented death to anyone else. But to Jun Xiaoyaro, it was just SOSO. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped into the sky and waved his sleeves. Chaotic aura surged around his body and fell down, crushing the void. Within his body, a nomological law flickered with a brilliant splendor as a rich power of blood surged within it. It was the physical body law. The heavenly tribulation can make my physical body law more perfect and flawless. To others, this ultimate paragon tribulation was a fatal tribulation. But to Jun Xiaoyaro, it was a great tonic. Rumble. Jun Xiaoyaro stepped into the sky step by step, crushing the void with his feet. After condensing the physical body law, his physical strength had increased exponentially. In fact, it had already begun to transcend the concept of the physical body. Instead, it had turned into an existence like law energy. There was also the 3,000 Sumeru worlds that he had cultivated with the Physique book. Because of the condensation of the physical body law, more and more Sumeru worlds evolved and were born. From 260, it began to increase rapidly. 270, 280, 290, boom. Vast lightning intertwined with each other, turning into a lightning firmament that swept down. The sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The desolate border trembled. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and punched out. A punch that split the sky. Boom. Lightning flashed across the ground, exploding in the vast expanse. Tens of millions of miles-long spatial cracks were spreading. This was simply like an apocalyptic catastrophe. Lightning of various colors were descending, bombarding. Heavenly yin source lightning, dark nether lightning, rainbow immortal lightning, chaotic lightning. The innumerable lightning tribulations dazzled everyone's eyes. At the same time, Young figures appeared in the tribulation clouds one after another. There were men and women. The men were incomparably tall, and the women were pitilessly beautiful. They were all imprints left behind by the most outstanding group of people in each epoch. There was a man's phantom driving the five spirits' war chariot, like a celestial emperor patrolling the world. There was a woman with peerless beauty, like the reincarnation of a female immortal, raising her palm to suppress all living thing. It could be said that any one of the phantoms was peerless. They even surpassed some of the seed-level prodigies present. It's too terrifying. What kind of tribulation is this? That chaotic Physique will definitely die. It's impossible for him to live. Those prodigies who were hiding in the distance were all terrified. If it were them, they would probably not be able to hold on for more than a few breaths of time and would directly turn into ashes. And amidst the endless lightning flashing, Jun Xiaoyaro was like a chaotic god of war, an undying divine king. With a flip of his fingers and palm, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Heavens, all of you are defeated by me. What can a mere tribulation do to me? Jun Xiaoyao's white robes fluttered in the wind. His black hair was messy, adding a bit of unruly and carefree charm to Jun Xiaoyao. As far as Jun Xiaoyao was concerned, he was nothing but nothingness. He was not tainted by karma. His fate would not be controlled by any rules. His fate was his own. Jun Xiaoyaro scattered the lightning tribulation in front of him with a chaotic palm seal. The chaotic heavens splitting apart phenomenon appeared behind him, and the vast expanse of thousands of miles was covered by chaos. Even the vast lightning tribulation was drowned in it. In front of him, many phantoms that had left behind their names in history charged towards Jun Xiaoyao. There was a supreme hero who drove the five spirits' war chariot like a heavenly emperor. There was a pitilessly beautiful goddess who was like the reincarnation of a true immortal. And towards these, Jun Xiaoyaro smiled casually. Where are the heroes of history? How many people in this era can be a match for me? The rise and fall of 10,000 eras, all of you are dust. Today, in the vast earth, my lord rises and falls. Jun Xiaoyaro shook his sleeves and took out the god's weeping war halberd. His white hair was 30,000 feet long and scattered in the void. With a slash of the halberd, thousands of lightning tribulations were split apart. The heroes of 10,000 generations were all passers-by, and only Xiaoyaro left his name behind. Chapter 1000. Wild, unrestrained, uninhibited. 3,000 strands of white hair fluttered in the void. Jun Xiaoyaro held the god's weeping war halberd in hand, white clothes fluttering in the wind. He was like a war god who broke through the shackles, towering between heaven and earth. He faced the boundless heavenly tribulation alone. Facing the lightning tribulation that covered the heavens, Jun Xiaoyao's figure seemed extremely thin and insignificant. However, that ramrod-straight body was like a backbone that supported the heavens, lofty and unyielding. Almost all eyes in desolate border were cast towards the boundless expanse. A single person faced the legendary final supreme tribulation. At this moment, even immortal domain's heavenly geniuses revealed shock, great waves stirring in their hearts, finding it hard to calm down. The other side actually had such an extraordinary and peerless figure. There were immortal domain heavenly geniuses who were incomparably shocked. They once again recalled that their immortal realms once had such a dazzling and transcendent character. Only, unfortunately, that figure sacrificed himself for the sake of protecting immortal domain. Ling Yang looked at that white-clothed figure who was crossing the heavenly tribulation, her eyes even looking like they were in a daze. That similar aura made her thoughts become chaotic. On the side, Jiu Tiez's expression sunk. Jun Xiaoyaro, who previously brought him a shadow, had already fallen. In the end, another one appeared now. He only hoped that this primal chaos Physique would fall in the final supreme tribulation. Everyone's attention was focused, their eyes firmly locked onto him. Above the heavens, endless lightning flashed. Jun Xiaoyao's halberd swept out, carrying chaotic blade radiance, directly hacking towards that figure in front of him. That imposing figure who drove the five spirits' war chariot like a heavenly emperor patrolling the world was directly hacked to pieces by a halberd. Then, behind Jun Xiaoyaro, the irregular phenomenon of primal chaos splitting open the heavens appeared, suppressing towards that peerless woman. That woman's void figure was shaken until intense ripples appeared, shaking. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand, grabbing that woman's neck. With a bang noise, the woman's void imprint was directly crushed, turning into specks of light that filled the sky. This powerful scene left everyone shocked to the point where they almost suffocated. These were all imprints left behind by the most powerful group of heavenly geniuses since ancient times. In the end, he was nothing in front of Jun Xiaoyaro. If it was really as he said, the current vast land should be controlled by the new generation. Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other hand, was the leader of the new era. Rumble. Another terrifying figure emerged from the tribulation clouds. His entire body was shrouded in a brilliant mist, like an ancient god. His body was huge, like an ancient god giant. Jun Xiaoyao truly looked like an ant before that figure, which made him look very small and insignificant. That aura, many people felt their souls tremble when they saw that figure. Is that the young mythical emperor, or the young celestial emperor? The pupils of many sky prides were trembling. That pressure was even greater than when the great emperor was young. That ancient godlike silhouette then pressed down on Jun Xiaoyaro with his hand. His palm covered the vast sky, and his 5 fingers were like pillars that imprisoned heaven and earth. Like a 5-fingered mountain, it pressed down on Jun Xiaoyaro. Even Jun Xiaoyao's brows were slightly furrowed when he saw that figure. This was definitely a figure that surpassed the great emperor level. But even so, Jun Xiaoyaro was fearless. In front of me, gods, demons, immortals, and Buddhas do not exist. Who dares to be high and mighty? Jun Xiaoyao's chaotic blood and divine blood boiled all over his body. Waves of divine flames wrapped around his body and burned fiercely. The laws of his physical body were dazzling, blooming with divine light. The power of the Sumeru world surged, and divine energy surged, shaking the void. No one was qualified to sit high and mighty in front of Jun Xiaoyao. Not even gods, demons, immortals, or Buddhas. Jun Xiaoyao made his move. The god's weeping halberd cut through the universe, and chaos tore open the sky, tearing apart the vast expanse. The laws intertwined, and runes were branded. One after another, great stars from beyond the heavens burned, shattered, and fell down, forming a dazzling meteor shower. Bang! The hand that was bigger than the sky directly enveloped Jun Xiaoyao's entire body. At this moment, the world fell into a short period of dead silence. It's over. Seeing this scene, many people looked over. Lord War God. On the other side, there were creatures wailing in grief. On the celestial realm side, most people wiped the sweat off their foreheads and secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If such a heaven-defying monster really succeeded in transcending the ultimate tribulation, that was definitely not a good thing for the celestial realm. Ling Yang held her breath for a moment, and her face turned slightly pale. For some reason, her heart trembled inexplicably. Damn it! The Golden Crow Little Sacred King and the other Archean royalty seeds were a little unhappy. They had spent so much effort to set up the 9th Archean killing formation, but in the end, they were unable to personally kill the chaotic Physique. Just when everyone thought that the dust had settled, rumble, a muffled thunderous sound rang out. Cracks began to appear at the places where the giant hand was wrapped around. Chaotic light shot out from within. Boom! Amidst an earth-shaking explosion, a figure broke out from within. The dark golden halberd blade slashed directly at the ancient godlike figure. It cut off its head. Bang! The void figure shattered, and the imprint shattered. Everyone was shocked. Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. The legend of this era will be written by me. Jun Xiaoyao's voice was vast and mighty, spreading through the vast expanse of 100,000 li. This tone made heaven and earth tremble. Thunder rumbled, as if the heavens were furious. What big words! Is he determined to become a legend? There are some words that can't be spoken carelessly. Hearing this, many geniuses' hearts trembled. Proving one's Tao and becoming an emperor was already an extravagant hope for most creatures. Not to mention becoming a legend, it was even more unimaginable. Since ancient times, only a group of living beings had managed to transcend. In the sky, Jun Xiaoyao destroyed the imprints of the geniuses in all directions. At this moment, all kinds of lightning tribulation gathered, turning into lightning pillars, lightning dragons, lightning phoenixes, and so on. They all bombarded Jun Xiaoyaro. It was as if they wanted to completely erase Jun Xiaoyaro from this world. Come. Thousands of lightning tribulations are on my body. I want to see if the heavens can destroy me. Jun Xiaoyaro directly let go of his hands and triggered the lightning tribulation to bombard him. The first law he condensed was the law of the physical body. It represented Jun Xiaoyao's unparalleled physical body. Whether it was the sacred body of the ancients or the chaotic physique, they were all the same. He needed to use the power of the heavenly tribulation to baptize the law of the physical body and make it more perfect. There were also the 3,000 Sumeru worlds. He could also use the power of the ultimate tribulation to condense some more. Boom! All kinds of lightning phenomena turned into waterfalls and directly drowned Jun Xiaoyaro. That kind of powerful tribulation punishment was something that even a prime could not withstand. If they were tainted even a little, they would instantly turn into ashes. It's too terrifying. All the geniuses were terrified under this heavenly might. Even the prime was like this. The supreme tribulation that they had once transcended was nothing compared to the supreme tribulation of the final tribulation. It was not even comparable. And Jun Xiaoyaro, who was drowned by the lightning. Every inch of his body was emitting lightning. In his body, his flesh and blood began to be filled with rich energy of laws. There were also cells that turned into Sumeru worlds. Jun Xiaoyao's body was no longer purely made of flesh and blood. It was the combination of the most powerful energy. Jun Xiaoyao's cultivation was also rising. Early stage supreme, middle stage supreme, late stage supreme. If this was known by outsiders, they would definitely be shocked out of their wits. People who could continuously break through in the supreme realm were definitely heaven-defying existences, peerless monsters of all times, abnormal anomalies. Chapter 1001. Jun Xiaoyao's figure was submerged in the tens of thousands of feet lightning waterfall. The sky and earth were filled with all kinds of violent lightning power. That kind of power, even a supreme being didn't dare to approach. If they were slightly affected, their bodies would be shattered. Everyone in the surroundings could no longer see Jun Xiaoyao's figure clearly. The blazing lightning blinded the eyes of many geniuses. Only the rumbling of thunder could be heard. 100 times, 1,000 times, 10,000 times. The lightning that covered the world all gathered in the center, turning into a pillar of lightning that connected heaven and earth. Everyone held their breaths at the sight of such a marvelous scene. Everyone could feel their hearts beating fast. Regardless of whether it was the immortal realm or the foreign creatures, at this moment, they could feel that their souls seemed to be about to leave their bodies. All of their minds were focused on the vast expanse of lightning. Time passed. The blazing and dazzling lightning also gradually began to weaken. Even the ultimate paragon tribulation, which only existed in legends, would come to an end. Is it over? What's going on? Has the chaotic body succeeded? The geniuses of the 8 directions all stared fixedly at the direction of the pillar of lightning that was gradually weakening. Everyone could feel that the power of the pillar of lightning was rapidly weakening. It was as if something was absorbing the power of the pillar of lightning. Finally, everyone saw it. A figure appeared from the gradually dissipating pillar of lightning. He was dressed in white, flowing with the radiance of supreme law. He held the god's weeping halberd in his hand. His white hair danced in the wind. He succeeded. Everyone's hearts froze for a moment. Jun Xiaoyaro successfully passed the ultimate supreme tribulation and became a supreme being. With a sweep of the god's weeping halberd in his hand, he easily cut through the void. That was the law of space. It was easily cut apart by Jun Xiaoyaro. If it was before, Jun Xiaoyaro could only break it with powerful strength. But now, he controlled the law with a casual wave of his hand. Jun Xiaoyao's strength stabilized at the late stage of the Supreme Being realm. To be able to break through 3 small realms in the Supreme Being realm. This was already a speed that many peerless geniuses could only dream of. After that, as long as Jun Xiaoyaro condensed other nomological laws, breaking through to the Jizuan realm was very easy. It could be said that there was no bottleneck at all. In addition, Zhang Xiaoyao's physical body laws were also perfect and flawless. It could be said that he had reached a certain extreme. This was because since ancient times, not many people had been able to survive the ultimate paragon tribulation. Not to mention the fact that he had absorbed all of the tribulation's power and used it to baptize his laws and body. Zhang Xiaoyao had done what no one before him had been able to do. Zhang Xiaoyao's 3,000 Sumeru worlds had reached 520 Sumeru worlds. It was almost twice as much as before. This was because Zhang Xiaoyao had used part of the power of the autark heavenly tribulation to open up the Sumeru world. The 3,000 Sumeru worlds was a body-refining technique that Zhang Xiaoyao had comprehended from the Physique book. As such, regardless of whether he had the sacred body of the ancients or the chaotic constitution, it did not hinder the condensation of the Sumeru world. Another part of the Supreme Tribulation's power was used to temper the body and laws. The current Zhang Xiaoyao had undergone a complete transformation. The laws of the physical body in his body were shining brightly. Every inch of his muscles, blood, and bones were sparkling and translucent. All kinds of divine chains of laws were intertwined within them. There were also runes engraved on his bones. After mastering the laws of the physical body, Zhang Xiaoyao's physical body had begun to take the first step towards transcendence. He really succeeded. The chaotic constitution has transcended the ultimate paragon tribulation. Is this true? Why do I feel like I'm dreaming? The geniuses of the two realms were a little dumbfounded. Until now, they still hadn't come back to their senses. They had witnessed an impossible miracle with their own eyes. Zhang Xiaoyao looked around. He had a feeling that he would reach the top. Before he broke through, Zhang Xiaoyao was already fearless of everything. Now, he could even ignore everything. The seed level, the princes and princesses were all ants in his eyes. Zhang Xiaoyao opened his mouth. His low and indifferent voice, but it contained a hint of dominance, slowly sounded. I am the autark. I will suppress the universe. As soon as he finished speaking, the laws of the autark surged and shook the void. Zhang Xiaoyao had succeeded. He had become the autark in the desolate border. Although he was still a long way from his goal of becoming an immortal. But the autark was a very important watershed. If those above the sage realm were experts, they were the upper and middle-class figures of the various large factions. Then the autark was a true big shot. Even among the Eternal Realm factions, they were definitely in the upper echelons. In fact, in some weaker factions, the autark could become a sage ancestor and become an ancestor-level existence. Zhang Xiaoyao could already be independent and didn't need to rely on the deterrence of the family behind him. He alone was enough to intimidate others. Heh, what big words. He just broke through, so his condition can't be so good. Maybe he's lying to us. The Golden Crow young sacred king shouted. He absolutely didn't believe that Zhang Xiaoyao could still be in his peak condition after transcending the ultimate paragon tribulation. Maybe he was strong on the outside but weak on the inside, just to intimidate others. Directly activate the 9th ancient killing formation, Xian Haoqiong shouted. In their eyes, even if Zhang Xiaoyao broke through, he was only a autark. He was on the same level as them. They had more than 10 people on their side, and Zhang Xiaoyao was alone. With the 9th ancient killing formation, killing the chaotic body should be a piece of cake. Boom. Under the control of more than 10 Archean royalty seed-level prodigies. Formation runes surged around the giant bone mountain, branding the void. The surrounding area was sealed. All kinds of killing lights appeared, so sharp that it felt like one's line of sight would be cut in half with a glance. Even the simplified version of the 9th ancient killing formation was enough to kill a autark. In addition, it was controlled by more than 10 seed-level prodigies, so its power was even stronger. Looking at the 9th ancient killing formation, Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes were as calm as a lake, without any fluctuations. He even put away the god's weeping war halberd. His white hair turned back to black, and every strand was crystal clear. Is he going to surrender? The 9-nether python's successor grinned, revealing his white wolf teeth. He couldn't wait to taste the flesh and blood of the chaotic body. Let's just kill him, the Phoenix Maiden said coldly as she picked her fingernails. Zhang Xiaoyao's behavior undoubtedly showed that he was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The killing lights of the ninth ancient killing formation shot toward Zhang Xiaoyao, tearing a hole in the sky. The stars in the sky were cut down one by one, and the power was boundless. Facing this, Zhang Xiaoyao still didn't dodge or react. Boom, boom, boom. The dense killing lights landed on Zhang Xiaoyao's body, splashing out ripples of laws. Is he dead? More than 10 Archean royalty seed-level prodigies looked over. But the next scene made their expressions instantly freeze, and their bodies petrified. Zhang Xiaoyao just stood there in the void without using any defensive means, and he didn't use the magical energy immunity divine ring. He blocked the attack of the ninth ancient killing formation with just his physical body. Even the skin on the surface of his body didn't break, and not a drop of blood flowed out. This isn't right. More than 10 Archean royalty prodigies felt their scalps go numb, and they were all dumbfounded, as if they had been petrified. They were so scared that their souls almost flew out of their bodies. Blocking the ninth ancient killing formation with just his physical body, this was King heaven defying. Zhang Xiaoyao reached out and brushed the non-existent dust off his clothes. I guessed right. The laws of the physical body have caused a qualitative transformation of my physical body. Zhang Xiaoyao was testing his own laws of the physical body and the strength of his physical body. Now, it seemed that he was very satisfied. It was said that the divine demonic ant was an unkillable cockroach, and its physical body was extremely strong. Now, Zhang Xiaoyao's physical body was many times stronger than the divine demonic ant's. It was far stronger than his previous self. Next, it's my turn. Zhang Xiaoyao slowly raised his right hand. Vaguely, the void rippled. It was as if some kind of great terror was about to descend and destroy the human world. This was the essence that Zhang Xiaoyao had comprehended from the black stone tablet, the living sacrificial scripture. Then, he combined it with his own Genesis Great Tao of Origins. The third move that he had created. Before the power of this move was displayed, even Zhang Xiaoyao himself wasn't sure how powerful it was. Chapter 1002. Zhang Xiaoyao stood above the firmament of the universe. More than 10 Archean royalty prodigies worked together to control the 9th Archean killing formation. They couldn't injure him at all. Not even a drop of blood was shed. Zhang Xiaoyao stood there, allowing the Archean royalty prodigies to attack him with the 9th killing formation, but it didn't affect him at all. How is this possible? The Golden Crow young sacred king, Xian Haoqiong, 9 Nether Python's successor, Phoenix Lady, and the others were shocked. Their expressions changed drastically, and their faces were as pale as paper. In their eyes, even if Zhang Xiaoyao broke through, he should be an arrow at the end of its flight. They took another step back. Even if Zhang Xiaoyao wasn't injured, he was only a supreme being, the same realm as the Golden Crow young sacred king and the others. However, there were more than 10 of them, while Zhang Xiaoyao was only one. In the supreme being realm, it was already very difficult to fight 1 against 2, let alone 1 against 10. No, his realm is not an ordinary supreme being. A royal prodigy sensed the aura overflowing from Zhang Xiaoyao's body. Late-stage supreme being realm, how is this possible? He broke through 3 small realms in a row. All the prodigies were in an uproar. They were incomparably shocked. Ordinary people would only break through to the early stage supreme being realm after passing the supreme being tribulation. However, Zhang Xiaoyao directly broke through to the late stage supreme being realm. It's too terrifying. All the prodigies from the celestial realm were terrified. To them, the alien chaotic body was like the ultimate boss. It was even more pressurizing than the immortal kings from the other realms. Because no matter how strong those immortal kings were, it was very difficult for them to take another step forward. It would take them countless years. Meanwhile, a chaotic body that had passed the ultimate tribulation had endless potential. Damn it! Even the Golden Crow young sacred king, who had been confident that victory was in his hands, felt guilty at this moment. Cold sweat flowed down his back, and he wanted to retreat. However, Zhang Xiaoyao, who was standing on top of the clouds, His indifferent gaze swept across everyone present. It was suitable to use these seed-level prodigies to test the third form of his genesis. Jun Xiaoyaro slowly raised his hand as a terrifying mystic energy flowed through it. Heaven and earth instantly darkened. There was a misty blood mist in the air. Vaguely, there seemed to be the sound of scriptures being chanted. However, it was not a Buddha chanting. Instead, demons and ghosts, asura and devil fiends, chanting sutras. In the void, densely packed runes appeared. Those were the universal sacrificial texts. They were as dense as ants, and they covered the entire world. What is this? Everyone was terrified, their hair standing on end. Under Jun Xiaoyao's feet, countless phantoms appeared. Countless living beings wept, howled, and cursed at Jun Xiaoyao's feet like ants. Jun Xiaoyaro lightly stomped his foot and black flames appeared. It was the flames of calamity that burned the earth. The countless living beings that appeared let out ear-piercing screams as they tumbled, roared, and bobbed up and down in the black flames. The scene was bizarre and terrifying to the extreme. All the sky prides felt their hair stand on end. Some of them couldn't help but retreat. At this moment, Jun Xiaoyaro seemed to have transformed into the god of darkness and destruction. With a stomp of his foot, all living beings fell into oblivion. God's sacrifice. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his right hand. The origin power of the universe in his inner universe merged with the power of sacrifice that he had comprehended from the universal sacrificial texts. A terrifying power swept through. Retreat. At this moment, even the 10 princes of Jinwu and the other Archean royalty prodigies were terrified. They felt a sense of strangeness. However, they discovered that they seemed to be controlled by some kind of domain and could not escape. Just like the phantoms that appeared, they could only sink into it. What is this? Phoenix Maiden's delicate body trembled. She discovered that a blood-red devil's snare flower had suddenly grown on her snow-white arm. This datura flower was extremely demonic, as if it had been watered with blood. Phoenix Maiden also felt that the supreme laws condensed in her body were breaking down and being absorbed by the datura flower. Then, a second and a third datura flower appeared on Phoenix Maiden's body. They were also absorbing Phoenix Maiden's energy, the power of laws, and so on. It was as if Phoenix Maiden's delicate body was fertile soil. And these blood-red datura flowers absorbed the nutrients of the soil, rapidly growing and blooming. This was definitely extremely strange and terrifying. It caused Phoenix Maiden's beautiful face to be completely distorted. She was incomparably terrified. Not only her, but the Golden Crow Little Sacred King, Xian Haoqiong, the successor of the 9 Nether Ao, and the other royalty prodigies were also the same. What the hell is this? It's absorbing my power of laws. Xian Haoqiong shouted. The dragon aura around him surged, wanting to disperse the datura flower. There were also prodigies who reached out to pull it out. However, as soon as they pulled it out, they felt a heart-wrenching pain. It was as if the datura flower had taken root in their heart. This caused more than 10 Archean royalty prodigies to break out in cold sweat, and their hair stood on end. Not only them, but the other spectating prodigies also felt a chill down their spines. Even the foreign prodigies who were used to bloodshed gasped. They could not help but feel their scalps go numb. What kind of technique is this? The Golden Crow Little Sacred King's body was burning with the divine sun flame. He wanted to burn the datura flower that grew out of his body, but it was useless. He yelled at Jun Xiaoyaro in a horrified manner. Jun Xiaoyao's expression was calm. He was still raising his hand, like the god of destruction who controlled the sacrifice and death of all living beings. This was the third style that Jun Xiaoyaro had created after God's light and God's punishment. Genesis, God's sacrifice. God's sacrifice, sacrificing all living beings. If the first style, God's light, represented God's light shining on all things. The second style, God's punishment, represented God's punishment. Then the third style represented God's punishment. God regarded all living beings as nothing more than straw dogs and was aloof and indifferent, using all living beings as sacrifices to feed himself. At this moment, there was no doubt. The Golden Crow Little Sacred King and the others were all sacrifices. They were sacrifices to Jun Xiaoyaro, the god of destruction. Splat. Blood-colored datura flowers grew out of the 9 nether python successor's body. Anyone with trypophobia who glanced at it would definitely die on the spot. Then, these blood-colored datura flowers bloomed completely at the same time. The 9 nether python successor's body was instantly annihilated. Those blood-colored datura flowers also turned into streams of blood energy and entered Jun Xiaoyao's body. Jun Xiaoyaro instantly felt a wave of nomological fragments and energy enter his body. Those were the blood-colored datura flowers. They shattered the nomological fragments in the 9 nether python successor's body, absorbed them, and then fed them to Jun Xiaoyaro. This move could be said to be extremely domineering. How is this possible? A seed-level prodigy died without any resistance. The surrounding prodigies from the 2 worlds felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. This move, even Ling Yang was stunned. This terrifying move made her feel a chill run down her spine. It was too bloody and strange. Was this really a move that he would create? Chapter 1003. Then, after the successor of the 9 nether python, the blood-colored datura flowers on the other Archean royalty seeds also bloomed. One by one, the royal seeds turned into dust and died. Even their primordial spirits were sucked dry. Even as a paragon, they had no power to resist at all. They were like dead dogs that were being hung up and beaten. No. This is impossible. Xian Haoqiong was a little crazy. He held the Golden Dragon King's spear in his hand and directly pierced towards Jun Xiaoyaro. Jun Xiaoyaro only raised his eyebrows slightly. Fart. The datura flowers on Xian Haoqiong's body bloomed, and he also turned into dust. No. I won't die here. I'm a prodigy of the Sun God Mountain. I still have to fight in this era. The Golden Crow Lesser Sacred King was scared out of his wits. He turned around and flapped his wings to escape. Fart. The datura flowers bloomed, and he also turned into dust. In the end, only the Phoenix Maiden was left. She was scared out of her wits, and she was no longer as cold and vicious as before. At this moment, she was in a sorry state with snot and tears. Then, under everyone's stunned gazes, she actually knelt and pounced towards Jun Xiaoyaro. I was wrong, I'm willing to be a slave. The Phoenix Maiden was scared out of her wits. She was like a bitch on the verge of death, wailing in grief. Jun Xiaoyao's lips curled into a cold smile. He stretched out his hand and slowly pinched the Phoenix Maiden's chin. Tell me, who sent you a message from my realm? This. The Phoenix Maiden did not expect Jun Xiaoyaro to ask her this question. Originally, this should be a secret. However, looking at Jun Xiaoyao's unfathomable eyes that were as deep as the night, she was scared. The Phoenix Maiden was scared. She was already tortured by the strangeness of the god's sacrifice to the point of almost going crazy. Jun Xiaoyaro was like an elegant death god. The Phoenix Maiden had no power to resist him. There was no room for negotiation. I'll talk, it's Prince Bayan, the Blood Emperor, Prince Jimeng, and the others. They told us that you will definitely come to the great sacrificial blood ground. They told us to prepare our killer moves in advance. The Phoenix girl revealed all the secrets in full detail. Not good. Far away in the dark, Prince Bayan and the others saw this and their faces turned extremely gloomy. They had never imagined that things would turn out like this. Retreat. Without the slightest hesitation, Prince Huygen and the others chose to retreat. As long as they returned to the other side, they had the Emperor clans behind them. Even if he knew that it was their scheme, the most he could do was throw them into the dungeon and punish them. You think you can leave? Jun Xiaoyaro sneered. Now, ordinary monarchs were no different from ants in front of him. Even the 7 minor emperors were just slightly bigger ants. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand again. The power of God's sacrifice spread out and locked onto Prince Huygen and the others. This move was a sacrificial move. It was extremely terrifying. Its power even exceeded Jun Xiaoyao's own expectations. Prince Huygen and the others suddenly realized that there were devil's snare flowers growing out of their flesh. His expression immediately changed. He revealed himself and shouted, "What are you doing? You want to kill your comrades? I have the Huygen Emperor clan behind me. Aren't you afraid of angering the Emperor clan behind us by doing this? Blood Emperor also scolded coldly. The ones who colluded with the immortal domain and besieged me are you guys. Jun Xiaoyaro smiled coldly. In fact, he had long known that Prince Huygen and the others were spying in the dark. He could also kill them at any time. However, directly killing them was a bit unreasonable. He needed a reason. He didn't expect that he would really force the Phoenix girl to give him a reason. However, this made Jun Xiaoyaro frown secretly. Did this mean some Archean royalty secretly had some kind of agreement or collusion with the Emperor clans of the other side? Was it only the Archean royalty who did this, or were other undying forces also involved? Jun Xiaoyaro felt that the relationship between the two worlds wasn't as simple as he imagined. It was a bit complicated. The waters of the immortal domain were really deep. Of course, he had to investigate the relationship between the Archean royalty and the other side. That would have to wait until Jun Xiaoyaro recovered his identity and returned to the immortal domain openly. Right now, it was enough to kill these annoying flies. Die. Jun Xiaoyaro was too lazy to say more. The power of the god's sacrifice directly covered Prince Huygen and the others with blood-red datura flowers. No, you can't do this. I still have someone behind me. Prince Huygen shouted. However, he, Blood Emperor, Prince Jimeng, and the others didn't finish their words. The datura flowers bloomed all over his body, and his primordial spirit and physical body turned into dust and dissipated. Jun Xiaoyaro was able to guess who the person behind Prince Huygen was. It was none other than the Fufeng of Gojosian. Fufeng of Gojosian had long been on Jun Xiaoyao's must-kill list. With the death of Prince Huygen and the others, Jun Xiaoyaro once again felt a surge of vigorous energy and lore fragments entering his body. This feeling is wonderful. The speed of collecting lore fragments is much faster than cultivating the heavenly immortal fruit, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. It was no wonder that in the fantasy world, there would be the fetishist sect. Wasn't it better to directly devour and refine the enemy's bloodline and physique energy? It was just that the method was a little demonic. Of course, Jun Xiaoyaro wouldn't use this move every time he saw someone to collect lore fragments. He hadn't reached that level of madness yet. Jun Xiaoyaro finally understood what was going on. Why would the clan recorded on the back of the Black Ancient Monument be submerged in the annals of history? Perhaps it was because they used the power of sacrifice too crazily, which led to destruction. The Black Sky Clan. Jun Xiaoyaro muttered in his heart. I've said everything. Can you let me go? I'm willing to be your slave. The Phoenix girl said in fear. Jun Xiaoyaro didn't say anything. The datura flower bloomed. The Phoenix girl turned into dust and died. Dead, they're all dead. The geniuses of the two realms, more than 10 young supreme beings, were instantly killed by the chaotic physique. As for the remaining sky prides, even their divine souls were frozen. They were dumbfounded. This was simply unimaginable. One had to know that even that young war god who had once killed 10 seed-level geniuses in a row in the desolate border. It was only after a heaven-shaking battle that he was able to kill all of his opponents. Moreover, he had also suffered serious injuries. In the end, Jun Xiaoyao. He only raised his hand. All of his opponents were directly annihilated. Not even the corner of his clothes moved. This was extremely ridiculous. Retreat. The other geniuses of the immortal realm were already quite far away, and now they retreated even further. They were really scared. Even the geniuses of the foreign realm subconsciously retreated. Although they had fanatical worship for Jun Xiaoyao. But Jun Xiaoyao's move was really a bit strange. It made them subconsciously feel lingering fear. Now, do you still think the Son of Heaven has the confidence to deal with him? Jun Qingyan's expression was extremely solemn. Jun Yinhuang was speechless. The strength displayed by the foreign chaotic physique was too heaven-defying. It was simply like the young age of the Dark God Emperor. On the side of the immortal realm, there were probably not many people who could deal with it, not even Jun Bieli. What if it's Lord Son of God? Jun Qingyang muttered in her heart. She missed that invincible figure again. If he was still alive, Perhaps he had the ability to block this invincible foreign chaotic physique with his own strength. Looking at the retreating geniuses in all directions, Jun Xiaoyaro smiled faintly, not caring at all. He had broken through to the supreme realm and condensed the laws of the physical body. He also created the third move of Genesis. Jun Xiaoyaro was very satisfied with its power. Next, there was only one last thing left. Jun Xiaoyaro descended from the sky and arrived in front of Su Hongyi, who was lying in a pool of blood. Su Hongyi's limbs had been cut off, and only her body was left. She still had a breath left. Young master, Hongyi is very useless. Su Hongyi's fair and charming face was extremely pale due to the loss of blood. Her consciousness was blurred, and her thoughts were scattered. How could it be? Jun Xiaoyaro smiled. Ignoring the bloodstains, he directly carried Su Hongyi out of the pool of blood. For some reason, Ling Yang, who saw this scene from afar, felt inexplicably uncomfortable. Jun Xiaoyaro carried Su Hongyi. His white clothes were also stained with blood. The Dark Sky Clan, who controls the power of sacrifice, will see the light of day again with you. It's time for the Dark Sky God to awaken. Chapter 1004. Previously, Jun Xiaoyaro was very interested in Su Hongyi's background. However, Su Hongyi herself said that she didn't know which clan she came from. She had no parents since she was young and was adopted. However, Jun Xiaoyaro saw a blurry hexagram mark under Su Hongyi's lower abdomen. At that time, he guessed that Su Hongyi should be related to the 6 Destruction Kings. And now, there was also a blurry hexagram mark on the mountain-sized head. In addition, Jun Xiaoyaro was holding Su Hongyi. He could clearly see in Su Hongyi's red eyes that were as red as blood. There was a blood-red datura flower blooming. There was no way Jun Xiaoyaro would believe that the two had nothing to do with each other. If my guess is right, then everything should make sense and have a reasonable explanation, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. For example, why would the blood sacrifice ground appear on the eve of the war between the two worlds so coincidentally? Because that was the time when Jun Xiaoyaro used the chaos blood to awaken the power in Su Hongyi's body and suppress her curse power. Because the curse power was suppressed and Su Hongyi's power was awakened, it caused the blood sacrifice ground to resonate. As for the source of the curse power in Su Hongyi's body, it was very easy to explain. The earthbound spirit in the great sacrificial ground of blood was the most direct evidence. The curse power came from the spirits that had been sacrificed by the Dark Sky Clan. That kind of monstrous resentment and hatred did not dissipate for a long time, and eventually turned into a deep curse engraved in the bloodline. Next, it's time to verify my guess. Jun Xiaoyaro raised his hand and used his fingers as a sword. The sharp sword light was swallowing. The sky-severing art was displayed. The 1,000-meter-long golden sword light illuminated the heavens and the earth as it slashed down at the mountain-sized skull. What is he doing? In the distance, the two worlds' paragons who were temporarily watching were puzzled. Jun Xiaoyaro had already set a record and was famous in the desolate border. What kind of trouble was he going to cause? Rumble. The white bone mountain was instantly split into two. Then, blood-red petals filled the sky. Those were the petals of the mandala flower. In the endless rain of blood-colored flowers, a simple, pitch-black mirror suddenly appeared in front of him. It was different from ordinary mirrors. Even the surface of the mirror, which was supposed to be smooth, was pitch-black like ink. It was as if some terrifying existence was sealed within it. With the appearance of this mirror, Jun Xiaoyaro immediately felt that the god's weeping war halberd in his spatial artifact was also trembling violently. Previously, when Jun Xiaoyaro entered the blood sacrificial ground, the god's weeping war halberd had also trembled. Now, the reaction was even more intense. Sure enough, my guess was right. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes lit up. This further confirmed the thoughts in his heart. Suddenly, Su Hongyi, who was in Jun Xiaoyao's arms, slowly floated into the air. Su Hongyi was also extremely confused. She turned to look at the dark mirror. For some reason, there was a faint sense of familiarity. Rumble. Just as everyone was bewildered, the pitch-black mirror suddenly trembled. A huge pitch-black demonic hand struggled to reach out from the mirror. Then, another hand reached out. It looked as if it was trying to break some kind of dormant seal. The existence in the mirror slowly struggled to break free. An extremely terrifying aura was emitted. It made everyone feel suffocated. That was an unparalleled power. Finally, the existence in the mirror completely revealed its body. It was an 8-armed demonic god. Although it was called a demonic god, it also gave off the feeling of a Buddha. It was as if it was the angry face of a Buddha. It could even be called an 8-armed demonic Buddha. Around the 8-armed demonic Buddha, there were blood-red mandala flowers blooming. The scene was extremely strange and terrifying. It was as if the demonic Buddha was sacrificing all living beings. It's here, the demonic dark sky. Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the strange and terrifying 8-armed demonic Buddha and muttered to himself. After comprehending the living being's sacrificial rites, Jun Xiaoyaro had some understanding of the dark sky lineage. There were very few living beings in this lineage. This was because they controlled one of the most forbidden powers in the world, the power of sacrifice. They sacrificed all living beings to nourish themselves. It could be said that this was an extremely heaven-defying and terrifying power. It was because they controlled this heaven-defying power that there were very few people in the dark sky lineage. Among these people, their bloodline was the strongest and purest. They could condense the demonic dark sky, which was the terrifying 8-armed demonic Buddha in front of them. And the person who could condense the demonic dark sky, they would be worshipped by all the members of the dark sky lineage and be known as the Mahakala. They could also be called the Mahakala god. If Jun Xiaoyaro guessed correctly, the existence that condensed the demonic dark sky should be a heaven-defying figure on the same level as the first god of war. It should be the Mahakala of the dark sky lineage. And Su Hongyi might be the reincarnation and inheritor of the Mahakala's power. This was because this lineage had another ability. It was to sow seeds through the power of sacrifice. Even if they died for some reason, they could be reborn in the cycle of reincarnation. The cycle of reincarnation was endless, immortal and indestructible. This was indeed an extremely terrifying emperor clan bloodline. It was no wonder they were drowned in history. It was because they were too heaven-defying that they incurred the jealousy of others. Forget about the immortal domain. Even on the foreign side, most of the emperor clans were apprehensive of the Dark Sky clan. What is that? It's too terrifying. On the immortal domain side, a group of heaven's prides felt their scalps go numb. Meanwhile, on the foreign side, a few extraordinary heaven's prides revealed extremely shocked expressions. Could that be the Dark Sky lineage's demonic Dark Sky? The Dark Sky lineage, a clan that has already disappeared, could it appear again here? No, my family's elders have said that the Dark Sky lineage has a deep obsession, reincarnating endlessly, never completely dying out. The foreign side creatures were incomparably shocked. Many people actually didn't know that the ancient darkness undying that died in the great sacrificial blood ground. It was actually the Dark Sky lineage's Mahakala god. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were watching. The demonic dark sky that came out from the pitch-black ancient mirror could be said to be the core inheritance of the Mahakala god. The demonic dark sky that represented the source of despair, the beginning of destruction, was so powerful that it made one tremble in fear. Mo Hetian looked at Su Hongyi with a pair of blood-red moon-like eyes. Then, he directly turned into a surge of vast power that entered Su Hongyi's body. Su Hongyi was originally the last remaining member of the Dark Sky lineage. She was also the reincarnated successor of the Mahakala god's will and power. Therefore, Mo Hetian should have returned to Su Hongyi. With Mo Hetian's return, Su Hongyi's black hair danced, dyed with a layer of blood-red halo. Her blood-red eyes were also as red as blood, and within them, a blood-red datura flower bloomed. The blood-red datura flower was also a flower that the Dark Sky lineage used as a sacrifice. Su Hongyi's severed limbs also grew back at a speed visible to the naked eye. The power of the curse that Jun Xiaoyaro had sealed within her body was something else. It was also refined and worn down by Mo Hetian's power. The source of the curse power was the souls that had been sacrificed by the Dark Sky lineage and the Mahakala god. Their unwillingness, resentment, and anger turned into a curse that was engraved into their bloodline, suppressing and eroding Su Hongyi's bloodline power. This prevented her from becoming stronger, and she could only become a little beggar that was bullied by others. Now, with Mo Hetian's return, Su Hongyi's red eyes shot out a demonic and strange blood-red light. I know. Su Hongyi muttered to herself. She knew all the secrets. Chapter 1005. Black Heaven Bloodline, the former top undying emperor race of the other side. Even though their clansmen were few, they were all powerful. At their peak, they weren't much weaker than the most powerful ultimate emperor races. The so-called ultimate emperor races were the most powerful, most mysterious, and most ancient emperor races of the other side. They originated from the unspeakable lands. Among those unimaginably powerful ultimate emperor races, there were absolute taboo undying existences known as natural disaster level. From a certain perspective, the most ancient of the other side's ultimate emperor races. Their status was equivalent to immortal domains Yan Ting, Underworld, Jun family, and other powerful undying powers. As for Mo Jie, Infernal, Blood Devil, Ji Meng, and other emperor races. Even though they were also extremely powerful, compared to those ultimate emperor races, their foundation, experience, and level of experts were a bit weaker. Black Heaven clan had few clansmen, but at their peak, their strength was close to the ultimate emperor races. One could see how powerful this clan was. Meanwhile, there was naturally a reason why they were so powerful. It was because of this clan's innate bloodline ability. Everyone knew that the other side's emperor races all had their own innate divine abilities. Mo Jie clan's magical power immunity, Infernal clan's infernal evil eye, Blood Devil clan's blood congealing soldiers, and other things. Meanwhile, the Black Heaven clan's innate bloodline divine ability was too heaven-defying, and also too powerful. It was precisely the power of sacrifice. As the name implied, it was to sacrifice other creatures, obtain their flesh power, magical power, and lore fragments, and other things. This led the Dark Sky clan to embark on the path of cannibalism, where they killed to prove their Tao. It could be said that even in the other side where the laws of survival were cruel. This type of method was also absolutely cruel, more terrifying than any evil ghost or Azura. Meanwhile, the Black Heaven clan's prosperity was precisely accumulated from countless sacrificed creatures. Forget about Immortal Domain's cultivators being terrified of the Black Heaven clan. Even on the other side, there were also quite a few clans that were wiped out by the Black Heaven bloodline. It was to the extent where if some undying emperor race people provoked the Black Heaven clan, they wouldn't dare to retaliate. They didn't even dare to retaliate and could only leave it unsettled. Meanwhile, hatred, restraining fear, jealousy, they were also imperceptibly formed. Later on, in the Black Heaven clan's land, a dark six-point star imprint pierced the heavens. It represented the birth of the world destruction 6 kings in the Black Heaven clan. The power of sacrifice and the mandate of heaven of the 6 world-destroying kings. That person quickly grew up. Through the power of sacrifice, countless living beings were sacrificed. In the end, he became the supreme grand heavenly god of the Black Sky clan. When heavenly god Mahakala appeared, even some of the ultimate emperor clan's old antiques were startled. The Black Sky clan was too uncontrollable. If they went crazy, they might even slaughter their own people on the other side. Thus, a conspiracy was born. During the War of the Two Realms, the great heavenly black god of the Black Sky clan had once fought, bringing great pressure to the immortal realm. Because they knew how terrifying heavenly god Mahakala was, the experts of the immortal realm all came out. On the other side, someone informed great black heavenly deity, telling him to hold them off for now. They would arrive soon after. Heavenly god Mahakala did not suspect anything. In the end, a total of 5 great emperors from the immortal realm appeared to encircle heavenly god Mahakala. Meanwhile, heavenly deity Great Black didn't wait for the foreign undying king's reinforcements. He completely understood. The Haitian clan had been backstabbed and schemed against by their own side. His bloodline was too uncontrollable, provoking too many opponents, so he was abandoned. In the end, heavenly god Mahakala roared angrily towards the sky. I, heavenly god Mahakala, will never die, reincarnate until death. Where the devil's snare flower blossoms, I will return once more. The devil's snare flower's language represented death and revenge. In the end, heavenly god Mahakala sacrificed immortal realm's 5 great emperors with his own strength. The desolate border trembled, forming a vast great sacrificial blood ground. The barrier and shockwaves it produced only began to dissipate in this great era. Meanwhile, after heavenly god Mahakala was schemed against, the entire remaining He Tien clan was naturally surrounded and annihilated. Those emperor clans that previously had conflicts with the He Tien clan all took action, not showing any mercy. The vast emperor clan was like a collapsing building, directly destroyed. There were almost no survivors from this clan. After many years, a blood-eyed creature revived, but in the end died prematurely. Then, another woman woke up, devil's snare flower blooming beneath her feet. Then, she also died. Until now, Su Hongyi appeared. The last descendant of the He Tien clan, the inheritor of heavenly god Mahakala's obsession. After everything had been memorized, Su Hongyi came back to her senses. She understood everything. She also knew that she did not have any so-called biological parents. In this world, she had no one to rely on, and even her clansmen had died. An unprecedented loneliness enveloped her. At this moment, a voice sounded. Hongyi, you know the truth. Hearing this gentle voice, Su Hongyi suddenly came back to her senses. She looked at Jun Xiaoyao. His white robes were still stained with his own blood. No, I still have my young master. Su Hongyi's blood-red eyes gradually regained their color. She had no parents, no clansmen. But she was definitely not alone. She would not inherit heavenly god Mahakala's obsession for revenge. She was just Jun Xiaoyao's follower, a maid and servant. If Jun Xiaoyao told her to go east, she would go east. If he told her to go west, she would go west. What reviving the He Tien clan? What upholding heavenly god Mahakala's obsession? These were not important to Su Hongyi at all. Only Jun Xiaoyao was the most important to Su Hongyi. Next, there was a rumbling sound in Su Hongyi's body. Her aura also directly soared. In the end, she broke through to the supreme stage. It was not that Su Hongyi broke through from the great sage to the supreme stage. But she originally had this kind of power, and after fusing with Mo He Tien, her strength was completely released. And with the removal of the curse, her realm soared. The dark hexagram mark under Su Hongyi's lower abdomen was no longer blurry and completely condensed. In the end, it turned into a beam of light that pierced through the sky. A dark hexagram mark appeared in the sky above the desolate border. She is also one of the 6 world annihilation kings. It was one thing for the chaotic body to be one of the 6 world annihilation kings, but the follower he picked up was also one of the 6 world annihilation kings. The geniuses on the foreign side were a little dumbfounded. Another world annihilation king has awakened. At the immortal domain's border, several quasi-emperors stood in the void with extremely serious expressions. First, it was the chaotic body that had passed the ultimate tribulation, which surprised them. Now, another world annihilation king had shown up. On top of that, it was heavenly god Mahakala who had brought a terrifying calamity to the immortal realm and perished together with 5 martial monarchs. The immortal realm could not allow these 2 world annihilation kings to live. Is he ready? Ask him to kill them from afar. Only he can do it. Our strength is not enough to kill them across the desolate border. After all, the foreign side has supreme experts too. The quasi-emperors wore stern expressions. Suddenly, an aged sigh sounded in their ears. Let me do it. Let's see if I can contribute to the 9 heavens immortal realm. The quasi-emperors were overjoyed when they heard the voice. The voice came from a martial monarch. Chapter 1006. Jun Xiaoyao, who was far away at the blood sacrifice ground. Naturally, he didn't know what the immortal region was up to. At this moment, he looked at Su Hongyi, who had completely awakened the mandate of the 6 apocalyptic kings, and smiled. He had really struck it rich this time. With a drop of chaos blood, he had obtained a apocalyptic king with endless potential as his servant. And one that would absolutely obey his orders. This was a huge profit. However, Jun Xiaoyao had high standards. If it were anyone else, they would never have discovered this gold buried in the sand. Of course, Jun Xiaoyaro knew Su Hongyi's loyalty. As long as she didn't betray him, Jun Xiaoyaro didn't mind treating her sincerely and treating her as one of his own. What's the secret of the Dark Sky clan? Jun Xiaoyaro asked. Although he had a rough guess from the information on the black stone tablet, he obviously couldn't guess everything. Su Hongyi didn't hold anything back. She told Jun Xiaoyaro everything she knew without holding anything back. Jun Xiaoyaro was enlightened. It was indeed similar to what he had guessed. The Dark Sky clan's sacrificial power was too strong. Because of that, they had made many enemies. Even the most ancient Ultimate Monarch clan was wary of them. Therefore, they tricked the Dark Sky clan and completely wiped them out. They became a clan that was buried in history. And the Dark Sky god created the Dark Sky clan. Because of his obsession, he reincarnated endlessly. However, this time, Jun Xiaoyaro wouldn't let Su Hongyi die prematurely. She would become his most capable right-hand woman. In that case, this mirror is... Jun Xiaoyaro turned to look at the pitch-black ancient mirror. This is the apocalyptic forbidden artifact, the Dark Sky mirror. It's also the Dark Sky clan's treasure. Su Hongyi waved her hand slightly, and the Dark Sky mirror flew over. Its quality and power weren't any weaker than Jun Xiaoyao's god's weeping war halberd. No wonder the god's weeping halberd trembled before. It turns out that they are of the same origin. In other words, each of the 6 Annihilation Kings has a world annihilation forbidden weapon. My god's weeping war halberd, Su Hongyi's grand dark heaven mirror, and the other kings should have them as well. Jun Xiaoyaro was thinking. He suddenly thought of the person he had almost forgotten. The little groom beside Tushan Wan. If he was also one of the 6 kings, he would have gone to look for the world-destroying forbidden artifact that belonged to him. Jun Xiaoyaro had always felt that there was a secret behind the god's weeping war halberd. Now, it seemed like there was some kind of connection between the 6 Armageddon forbidden artifacts. For example, like 6 keys. Of course, this was just Jun Xiaoyao's guess. Young master, I'll leave this to you. Su Hongyi held the Mahakala mirror with both hands and respectfully handed it to Jun Xiaoyaro. Although this item should have belonged to her, she still handed it to Jun Xiaoyaro without hesitation. Jun Xiaoyaro waved his hand and said, "No need. You can keep it for now. I'll get it when I need it. It might be useful in the future, so it would be better to let Su Hongyi keep it and improve her strength." "Thank you, young master." A smile appeared on Su Hongyi's fair and pretty cheeks. This was the manifestation of Jun Xiaoyao's trust in her. Because of Mo Hatian, the curse power in Su Hongyi's body had been completely removed, and there would no longer be scars or anything like that. At this moment, Su Hongyi's skin was fair and delicate, and her smile was clear and bright. Of course, it was only limited to Jun Xiaoyaro. If it were anyone else, she was still that cold and emotionless red-clothed demon queen. Okay, everything is done. The trip to the desolate border should be over. Jun Xiaoyaro let out a sigh of relief. Although he also wanted to return to the immortal region, find Jiang Shengyi, return to the Jun family, and meet those familiar people. He also wanted to prove to the world. In this game against the heavens, he, Jun Xiaoyaro, had won. But Jun Xiaoyaro still had things to do in the foreign realm. The matter of the soul book, the secret behind the world destruction 6 kings, the relationship between the Nirvana Emperor family and the ghost-masked woman, and most importantly, where was his father, Jun Wuhui, and what was he planning? Because of these things, Jun Xiaoyaro couldn't return to the immortal region for the time being. But one could imagine what kind of commotion Jun Xiaoyaro would cause if he returned to the immortal region with his true appearance. There would probably be a magnitude 18 earthquake in both the immortal region and the foreign realm, setting off a huge commotion. "Hongyi, let's go." Jun Xiaoyaro looked at the immortal region's geniuses in the distance again. Jiu Tiezi and the others didn't dare to take a step forward. That god's sacrifice really stunned all the immortal region's geniuses. Jun Xiaoyaro wasn't in a hurry. He would deal with them after returning to the immortal region. He also felt someone's gaze on him. It was Ling Yang. Did he sense a trace? However, I'll just treat it as an illusion. Looking at Ling Yang, Jun Xiaoyaro thought to himself. He could feel that Ling Yang seemed to have some strange feelings for him. But Jun Xiaoyaro was very rational. He would deal with all of this when he returned to the immortal region. Just as Jun Xiaoyaro was about to leave with Su Hongyi, suddenly, Jun Xiaoyaro stopped in his tracks. His sharp divine perception detected a trace of extreme danger. This sense of danger didn't come from the immortal region's geniuses. Right now, among the geniuses of the same level, no one could give him such a sense of danger. Then the only possibility was, Jun Xiaoyao's gaze suddenly looked into the distance. That was the immortal region's border, and in the depths of the immortal region, between the stars of the universe, there were 7 stars gathered together. And in the dim light of the 7 stars, a somewhat old and stooped blurry figure appeared. "Hey, little guy, did you sense it? The younger generation is really formidable, even passing the ultimate supreme tribulation. In the future, becoming a great emperor won't be the end. Amazing. However, it's a pity that you're not a hero of the immortal region. You must be nipped in the bud." This blurry old figure muttered to himself. Although his figure was a little stooped, there was an emperor's Tao radiance surging around him. The might of a great emperor was incomparably vast, illuminating the heavens and flickering the universe. It was as if the myriad Taos of the heavens were trampled under his feet. This was a great emperor of the immortal region. One had to know that because of the immemorial treaty, there were very few true great emperors in the immortal region. And this figure was a true great emperor. A great emperor famous for his archery. He had once drawn his bow at the border, crossing the desolate border with one arrow, killing several quasi-immortal level experts in the foreign realm, establishing brilliant military achievement. This was simply a human-shaped cannon. Almost no one who was targeted by his arrow survived. This stooped old man raised his hand. In his surroundings, 7 stars extended with light, tangling together. They turned into a flickering bowstring. Then, he slowly pulled. Immediately, all of the heaven and earth spiritual energy in the entire starry sky condensed. Countless runes and great Taos appeared. Hundreds of millions of law divine chains tangled together. Great Emperor's Tao radiance spread, condensing great Tao laws, turning them into an arrow flickering with Emperor's Tao radiance. Using the stars as a bow. Using laws as an arrow. Shio. The arrow of laws shot out. Its speed surpassed the speed of light, piercing through the void, tearing apart the vast expanse. An indescribably terrifying power made the entire universe tremble, transmitting to the desolate border. The desolate border shook. What is going on? On the great sacrificial bloodground side, all of the heavens' prides trembled. That power made the myriad Taos of the heavens tremble. Great Emperor. Jun Xiaoyao's brows were tightly furrowed, looking in the direction of immortal domain. A speck of light appeared. That was the arrow of laws. In almost an instant, it crossed hundreds of millions of space, arriving at the desolate border. One arrow, the entire desolate border shook. This was the might of a great emperor. Chapter 1007. What was a great emperor? Those who stepped on the supreme Tao were called great emperors. They were the controllers of the great Tao's rules. They were the pinnacle of existence, overlooking all living beings. With a thought, heaven and earth would collapse. With a thought, heaven and earth would crack. They could even touch the river of time. Controlling karma, controlling reincarnation, and shaping heaven and earth. It was the perfect manifestation of the ultimate form of life evolution. This was the kind of existence that could truly be called an imperial clan by themselves. At this moment, a great emperor from the immortal domain personally took action. That kind of wave was indescribable. The arrow of laws seemed to condense the most brilliant light in the world, incomparably dazzling. From the immortal domain, it shot to the desolate border in an instant. Everywhere it passed, the void collapsed, and the divine chains of order were broken. Along the way, several vast starfields were directly destroyed by this arrow, turning into dust drifting in the universe. The entire desolate border trembled under this arrow, greatly shaken. Heavens, that power! It's a great emperor. A great emperor has taken action. How is that possible? Is the target the chaos physique? The chaos physique actually made a great emperor take action. Throughout the desolate border, countless geniuses sucked in a breath of cold air, their hearts trembling. What kind of people were great emperors? They suppressed heaven and earth, and all living beings worshipped them. They all relied on their status. Yet, at this moment, he was attacking a member of the younger generation. It could be said that even if Jun Xiaoyaro died, his name would go down in history. Because from ancient times until now, there had never been a great emperor who took action against a paragon. But now, Jun Xiaoyaro had attracted the great emperor's killing intent. It was enough to see how monstrous and terrifying his talent was. Even a great emperor disregarded his status and wanted to kill him directly. That's true, Jun Xiaoyaro was a little speechless. This was like a flood rushing to the Dragon King's temple, family not recognizing family. However, it was understandable. After all, Jun Xiaoyao's current status was different. In addition, because of his fateless constitution, karma couldn't be checked. Therefore, it was normal to misunderstand. Is the chaos physique going to die? Many geniuses exclaimed. Even a great emperor had taken action, there was no doubt about it. Over at the blood sacrifice ground, the surrounding geniuses retreated rapidly, hiding far away. When a great emperor attacked, even the aftershocks could kill all living beings in the vicinity. Just as that destructive arrow of natural order was about to shoot toward Jun Xiaoyaro, on the other side, an ancient, cold snort sounded. Big Dipper Martial Emperor, you old bastard. To think that you would be so shameless as to break the rules. Hearing this voice, Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. He had heard this voice before. Back when he killed the Prince Mojie, the quasi-undying from the Mojie family wanted to cause trouble for him. In the end, a voice rang out, stopping the Mojie Emperor race's quasi-undying. And now, that voice sounded again. It was the immortal king from the Ars Academy. After he finished speaking, on the other side, a sky-covering great hand appeared. It wasn't a hand made of flesh and blood. Instead, it was a hand made of various great Tao precepts, divine chains of order, and law runes. It was as if a single hand could overturn the heavens and earth and destroy the universe. Rumble. The sky of desolate borders cosmos was shaking. The giant hand grabbed the arrow of rule that was shooting towards Jun Xiaoyaro. The two collided. Hundreds of millions of miles of huge spatial cracks spread out. Spatial turbulence surged, the void became chaotic, and the divine chains of order collapse. Countless large stars were instantly pulverized by the shockwaves of the collision. This was a battle between great emperors. Even if it was just the simplest collision, there was a feeling of world destruction. That giant hand grabbed the arrow of rule. On the other side of the border, the great emperors guarding the border raised their spirits. If the two world destroyer kings were allowed to return to the other side, when they grew up in the future, they would pose a great threat to the celestial realm. Under everyone's gazes, that giant hand that covered the sky clenched its 5 fingers. Intense sparks shot out. Those weren't real sparks, but the light produced by great Tao flames. The two were competing, controlling the great Tao precepts to collide with each other. This scene made many desolate borders prodigies go crazy, as if they were dumbfounded. Even some mystic venerables, godly venerables, and Tao venerables were observing carefully. The battle between two emperor-level existences was a great opportunity to comprehend the Tao in itself, able to bring endless inspiration to people. Is this an emperor-level battle? It's no longer restricted to the changes of divine abilities, but a collision of great Tao and rule. Jun Xiaoyaro was also observing and comprehending. It gave people the feeling that he wasn't the target of that arrow. And in this short period of time, Yi Zichen's expression changed. Jun Xiaoyaro borrowed this inspiration opportunity. He once again comprehended the dozen or so war god diagrams in the war god catalogue. Boom! At this moment, an ear-shattering sound rang out between heaven and earth. Everyone looked over in shock. They shockingly discovered that the arrow of rule was directly crushed by the giant hand. All kinds of resplendent brilliance appeared, and rule fragments shot into the universe's sky. He failed. On the celestial realms side, the faces of the prodigies were a bit pale. Could it be that their celestial realm's great emperors were really inferior to the immortal kings of the other side? Many people trembled, feeling sorrow in their hearts. Big Dipper, Great Emperor, you were previously seriously injured in the war between two realms, leaving behind irreversible injuries. Wouldn't it be better to just obediently sleep? Why waste so much effort? On the other side, War God Academy's immortal king's voice sounded. When these words were spoken, many people were shocked. What? You're telling me that this move was displayed by a seriously injured Great Emperor? Many people were dumbfounded. This wave of fluctuation destroyed heaven and earth. Many people thought that it was a Great Emperor at his peak attacking with all his strength. In the end, it was actually just a seriously injured Great Emperor attacking. Then if it was a truly uninjured Great Emperor attacking, what kind of scene would that be? Many people sucked in a breath of cold air, a bit stunned and stupefied. They once again refreshed their understanding of great emperors. Figures of this realm were too powerful, unimaginable. Lian Po is old, can he still eat? I can also use the last bit of my remaining energy. On the celestial realm's side, Big Dipper, Great Emperor, who was located in the depths of the starry sky, smiled slightly. On the desolate border's side, amidst the crushed and exploded arrow of rule, suddenly, another miniature ray of light shot out, its speed extremely fast. In an instant, it arrived at Jun Xiaoyao's side. That glimmer of light was a miniature arrow. Although its power was like heaven and earth compared to the arrow of rule just now. However, it was definitely more than enough to kill a supreme being. After all, it was a great emperor's move. Even the aftermath could kill a supreme being. Mother and child arrow, you. The immortal king's voice sounded from the other side. Everyone was also stunned by this sudden scene. Then, they suddenly understood. It turned out that the powerful arrow of rule was just a pretense. It was because they knew that there would be supreme experts from the other side intercepting it. As for the true killing move, it was only after the arrow of laws was intercepted and destroyed that it was unleashed. It had to be said that the great emperor's scheming methods were really not that simple. Young master. When Su Hongyi saw this, she cried out in alarm and directly blocked in front of Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed. Suddenly, he thought of something. Then, the corners of his mouth curled up into an undetectable smile. In order to do this, he had to seriously injure himself. Hongyi, get out of the way. Jun Xiaoyao directly pulled Su Hongyi to the side. Then, he suffered this great emperor's killing move. Chapter 1008. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. It was beyond everyone's expectations. It was in that instant that everything changed. Jun Xiaoyao used all of his defensive means. He pushed his magical power immunity to the extreme. A total of 20 layers of magical power immunity halos appeared and enveloped Jun Xiaoyao's entire body. Then, the supreme divine blood in his body boiled, and the fourth supreme technique was used, increasing all of his attribute. There were also 520 Sumeru worlds, which was also a huge defense. In the inner universe, the universe's origin power was flowing, protecting Jun Xiaoyao's body. The divine spirit immortality technique was also operating in his body, preparing to heal his injuries. Almost in an instant, Jun Xiaoyao prepared all of his defenses. The reason why he did this was because Jun Xiaoyao thought of a way. This method might allow him to obtain another great opportunity. Of course, the premise was that Jun Xiaoyao had to pay a certain price. Poochie. The miniature arrow pierced Jun Xiaoyao. The 20 layers of magical power immunity halos were directly shattered without any suspense. Then, the arrow directly pierced Jun Xiaoyao's body. The 520 Sumeru worlds in his body were shattered by the powerful and boundless force in an instant. There was a bloody mist spurting out. Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe shook, and the universe's origin power surged. But it was still difficult to block the arrow. It was not that the universe's origin power was weak. It was that the great emperor level means were too strong. Finally, Poochie, accompanied by the sound of flesh and blood breaking. The arrow pierced Jun Xiaoyao's body. Jun Xiaoyao's body was still and frozen. At this moment, it seemed that even time was frozen, and the world fell into a dead silence. "Master!" Su Hongyi screamed, and her face was as pale as paper. Everyone else was stunned as well. "Is the chaotic body dead?" "Of course, that goes without saying. But why didn't he explode into a bloody mist?" "Maybe the chaotic body's physique is too strong." Everyone's eyes were fixed on Jun Xiaoyao. Ling Yang didn't know why, but his heart suddenly tightened. Under the gazes of countless people, Jun Xiaoyao did not move. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He slowly opened his mouth, and blood flowed out. "Big Dipper Emperor, not bad." This voice spread throughout the world. This one sentence caused everyone to be dumbfounded. Is he mocking the great emperor? The chaotic body is so powerful that it even dares to provoke a great emperor. Is he trying to place himself above the martial monarchs? Desolate Border was in an uproar. Everyone who heard this had their eyes and mouths wide open. Their scalps went numb and they were shocked to the extreme. What kind of figure was the great emperor? Everyone worshipped him, high up above. In the end, Jun Xiaoyao said that the great emperor was not bad. He said the most arrogant words in the calmest tone. He was probably the first one since ancient times. Most importantly, although Jun Xiaoyao was seriously injured, he didn't die. As a supremacy, he took a blow from the great emperor and didn't die. He is indeed qualified to say this. Many people were shocked and sighed. Throughout the countless eras of the past, who could take a blow from the great emperor at the supremacy stage? Although the power of that arrow was weakened by 99% by the immortal king of the Ars Academy, the remaining power was enough to easily kill any supremacy. Even lesser heavenly venerables and greater heavenly venerables might die. In the end, Jun Xiaoyao was still alive. This was absolutely shocking and speechless. "Young master, how are you?" Su Hongyi flashed forward, her expression extremely nervous, afraid that something would happen to Jun Xiaoyao. The only reason she was alive now was for Jun Xiaoyao. Jun Xiaoyao's body was covered in blood, and there were terrifying penetrating wounds. If an ordinary supremacy was hit by this blow, their body would definitely explode and turn into dust. As for Jun Xiaoyao, although there were terrifying wounds on his body didn't disintegrate. This was already a miracle. However, while his body was injured, Jun Xiaoyao's primordial spirit also suffered a destructive attack. Because this arrow didn't just destroy the physical body, but also the primordial spirit, even someone as strong as Jun Xiaoyao had to pay a great price to take this arrow head-on. It could be said that it was already a miracle that Jun Xiaoyao could still speak. At the border, the expressions of the several boundary emperors above the starry sky changed, and they couldn't remain calm. "He's still not dead. We've already lost our chance." The boundary emperors sighed. They never expected that even a great emperor couldn't kill the chaotic body. Deep in the starry sky, the hunchbacked old man shrouded in blurry starlight, who was the Big Dipper Emperor, shook his head slightly. "Cough cough. I'm old. Who in the new generation of the immortal domain can deal with him?" The Big Dipper Emperor didn't choose to attack again. He had already lowered himself for the future of the immortal domain by taking action once. If he took action again, then he would really be shameless, completely losing the attitude of a great emperor. Not to mention, it was useless even if he took action again. This kind of mother-son arrow method could only be used once. But next, the border will probably be chaotic for a while. The Big Dipper Emperor's tone carried a hint of worry. The immortal domain broke the rules first. On the other side, it was naturally impossible for them to let the matter go. Big Dipper Emperor, I look forward to fighting with you in the future." On the other side, the War God Academy's immortal king snorted coldly, shaking the universe's sky like thunder. Clearly, the immortal domain's side breaking the rules first already made the supreme experts of the other side a little unhappy. On the side of the great blood sacrifice ground, many geniuses were still immersed in deep shock. Jun Xiaoyao's body was trembling slightly. "This time, I've gambled too much," Jun Xiaoyao thought to himself. He felt that his life aura was like a candle in the wind, incomparably weak. In fact, Jun Xiaoyao still had a trump card that he hadn't used. It was the 10-star reward, the Azure Black Blood. If he fused it, it would allow Jun Xiaoyaro to enter the dark mode. In that case, it shouldn't be difficult to resist this move without being injured. But that wouldn't achieve Jun Xiaoyao's goal. He wanted to heavily injure himself. Young master. Su Hongyi supported Jun Xiaoyao's body. Send me back to the War God Academy. Jun Xiaoyaro slumped forward as soon as he finished speaking. Su Hongyi hurriedly went forward and hugged Jun Xiaoyaro in her arms. Don't worry, young master. I will definitely escort you back to the War God Academy safely. Su Hongyi hugged Jun Xiaoyaro tightly with one hand. At this moment, the aura of a supreme being suddenly filled the surroundings of the blood sacrifice ground. Several seed-level geniuses of the immortal domain appeared. The chaotic body took a blow from the great emperor. Even if he doesn't die, he will be severely injured and on the verge of death. This is our only chance. The seed-level geniuses shouted coldly and charged towards Jun Xiaoyaro and Su Hongyi. That's right, this is a great opportunity. The other prodigies of the immortal domain also reacted, and their eyes immediately turned red. Killing an alien chaotic body was a great achievement. They would definitely leave their names in the annals of the immortal domain. Even Jiyu Tiezi was a little tempted. You want to harm the young master? You're courting death. Su Hongyi instantly turned from a pretty girl into a red-clothed demon queen with a murderous aura. The aura of a supreme being spread out, and in the void, many Dachra flowers bloomed. Protect the war god. The other prodigies of the immortal domain also reacted and rushed forward. The prodigies of the two domains immediately fought. Chapter 1009. The sounds of fighting and shouting could be heard incessantly. The immortal domain's heaven's prides were all bloodthirsty. They only wanted to kill the foreign chaotic body. Meanwhile, the other side's heaven's prides were risking their lives to protect the war god in their hearts. Jun Xiaoyaro could be said to have become the benchmark and faith of the other side's younger generation. His importance to the other side was self-evident. You must kill the chaos body. This is a great achievement that will leave your name in history. An immortal domain's seed-level heaven's pride roared. Immortal domain's ants want to harm the war god. You're courting death. The other side's heaven's pride roared. The great blood sacrifice ground instantly turned into a battlefield of slaughter. Several immortal domain's seed-level heaven's prides released their supreme auras, blasting away the surrounding foreign creatures. They directly attacked Su Hongyi and Jun Xiaoyaro. You're all courting death. Seeing the immortal domain's seed-level heaven's prides surround them, Su Hongyi's black hair danced in the wind. Her blood-red eyes had a devil's snare flower blooming. She activated the great dark sky mirror, releasing a hazy bloodlight. This was a world-destroying forbidden artifact on the same level as the god's weeping war halberd. Now that it was in Su Hongyi's hands, it could display unfathomable power. In addition, Su Hongyi herself had reached the supreme realm, and there was Mo Haitian in her body. It could be said that the current Su Hongyi was many times stronger than before. Even among the other side's younger generation, she was definitely one of the top existences. After all, she was one of the 6 world-destroying kings. Apart from Jun Xiaoyaro, there weren't many people of the same generation who could suppress Su Hongyi. Devil's Sacrifice. Su Hongyi activated her ultimate move. This was a divine ability engraved in her bloodline. In the void, one after another, magnificent blood-red devil's snare flowers appeared. There was a kind of strangeness in the beauty. What kind of power is this? An immortal domain heaven's pride roared in horror. He discovered that all the power in his body seemed to be sucked away by the devil's snare flowers. It was as if he was being sacrificed. Poochie. A heaven's pride's body exploded. But the strange thing was that there was no blood flowing out. Instead, blood-red petals filled the sky. This strange scene made many people's hair stand on end. He recalled Jun Xiaoyao's terrifying move. Those who dare to harm young master, die. Su Hongyi held Jun Xiaoyaro tightly with one arm. She was like a demon queen who had bravely broken through the encirclement for the man she loved. Although she had obtained the power of Mo Haitian. However, it was clear that the current her was unable to fully unleash Mo Haitian's power. However, Even if he could only unleash 1/10,000th of it, it was still extremely terrifying. After all, this Mohe Tien was the supreme celestial form of the Mahakala god. Heavenly god Mahakala could even use this Mohe Tien to fight against the 5 great emperors. Although Su Hongyi could only unleash a sliver of Mohe Tien's power, it was enough to wipe out all enemies. One genius after another fell in front of Su Hongyi. Even supreme-level seed-level skyprides were extremely weak in front of Su Hongyi, who had obtained Mohe Tien and the Mahakala mirror. Right now, Su Hongyi's strength was at least on the level of the 7 minor emperors of the foreign realm. Blood rained down. The blood-red light beam shot out from the Mahakala mirror directly tore apart an immortal realm seed-level skypride, destroying his primordial spirit. Damn it! Seeing this scene, Gu Tiez's expression darkened. Originally, this was the best opportunity to kill the chaotic physique. However, Su Hongyi's strength was too terrifying. Mohe Tien alone was enough to make her invincible. Not to mention, she also had the Mahakala mirror, which could kill gods and Buddhas in its way. On the other side, Ling Yang did not make a move. To be honest, it was not that she had not guessed that the chaotic physique might be Jun Xiaoyao. However, after thinking about it, even she felt that it was a little ridiculous. This was really a little too much for her to think about. In the end, Su Hongyi killed all the seed-level skyprides who attacked. Her battle record could be said to be the best after Jun Xiaoyao. However, Su Hongyi did not care. She only wanted to send Jun Xiaoyao back to the Ars Academy for treatment. Under Su Hongyi's escort, Jun Xiaoyao left the Great Blood Sacrifice ground. Gu Tiezi and the others did not make a move in the end, because he did not have the ability to stop Su Hongyi. After that, there were foreign experts who came to receive Jun Xiaoyao and escort him back to the foreign realm. This time, the desolate border training was over. However, the matter was not completely over. After that, there were foreign immortal kings who knocked on the border. The entire border was trembling, and an immortal radiance illuminated the heavens. The immortal realm side also lost a group of experts. They all knew that this was the foreign realm's revenge. After all, it was their immortal realm side who broke the rules first. And a few days later, Jun Xiaoyao was teleported back to the Styx River continent through the teleportation array. Su Hongyi brought Jun Xiaoyao back to the Ars Academy. However, as soon as they arrived at the Ars Academy, in the void, a peerless beauty in a plain long dress with a belt fluttering in the wind like a fairy appeared. It was Luo Xiangling. "Leave him to me." Luo Xiangling's tone was indisputable. Su Hongyi handed Jun Xiaoyao to Luo Xiangling. Luo Xiangling embraced Jun Xiaoyao's body. Looking at the young master in white clothes stained with blood, Luo Xiangling's heart suddenly trembled. He's seriously injured and needs medical treatment. Luo Xiangling turned around and headed towards the depths of the Ars Academy. On the other side, Fei Qingxue also heard the news of Jun Xiaoyao's serious injuries and was very anxious. As for Xian Yu, she was still recuperating, so she did not know. As for Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chun Chun, they had already returned to Tushan. With Jun Xiaoyao's return, the news in the desolate border finally reached the foreign realm. It immediately caused a huge uproar. With the strength of one person, he almost instantly killed more than 10 seed-level prodigies of the immortal region, even more than the god of war who set the record of 10 consecutive kills, and even his follower is one of the 6 world destruction kings. Lord Chaos Physique can actually take a blow from the great emperor and not die. When the foreign realm creatures learned of Jun Xiaoyao's various battle achievements in the desolate border, all of them were so shocked that their souls were trembling. Was this a battle achievement that a human could achieve? Monstrous, heaven-defying, and abnormal were not enough to describe Jun Xiaoyao's performance. Perhaps it could only be called a miracle. Great, under the leadership of the Chaos Physique, if the 6 world destruction kings really grow up, they might really be able to destroy the immortal region in this era. Many foreign realm creatures were shouting excitedly, thinking that the dawn had arrived. The disciples of the Ars Academy were even more crazy. Their worship of Jun Xiaoyao reached a peak. Because the foreign realm had the concept of the strong being supreme, Jun Xiaoyao had undoubtedly become an existence like a benchmark. I just don't know if Lord Chaos Physique can recover from his injuries. That's right, that group of immortal region dregs actually made the Great Emperor take action. Many foreign realm creatures were worried about Jun Xiaoyao's situation. And within the Ars Academy, Jun Xiaoyaro was lying in a treasure land filled with dense dragon energy. This was the source of the dragon vein. And at this moment, several figures gathered here. They all emitted a supreme aura. They were all quasi-immortal realm experts of the Ars Academy. Among them was Luo Xiangling. If you want to save him, there's only one way. That is to extract the dragon vein and merge it into his body. Luo Xiangling's tone was firm. Chapter 1010. What? This? Hearing Luo Xiangling's words, the quasi-immortal level Ars Academy's quasi-immortal level experts hesitated. This was no small matter. The entire Ars Academy relied on this dragon vein to establish itself. If the Ars Academy was compared to a building, the dragon vein was like a cornerstone. It was precisely because of this dragon vein that the entire Ars Academy could become a paradise and nurture countless heroes. But if the dragon vein was given to Jun Xiaoyaro, that was equivalent to giving the opportunities of countless geniuses to him alone. Although the Ars Academy would not immediately fall from grace after losing the dragon vein. But as time passed, the effect of the paradise would be weakened by more than half. After all, this dragon vein was formed by gathering the fate of a foreign world. It was very precious and rare. This is a serious matter. Do we need to consider it at length? A quasi-immortal level expert hesitated. Can we still delay it now? Don't you know what he means to our world? He is one of the 6 world-destroying kings, and his followers are also the 6 world-destroying kings. If he grows up, he will definitely become the pillar of our world. Moreover, he is the inheritor of the first-generation god of war. The entire Ars Academy was founded by the first-generation god of war. It is reasonable to use up a dragon vein to save him, Luo Xiangling said. Hearing this, the quasi-immortal level experts were speechless. And I believe that he may surpass the first-generation god of war, Luo Xiangling continued. The quasi-immortal level experts were all silent. If they heard this before, they might have thought that it was a bit whimsical. But now, after the desolate border incident, Jun Xiaoyao's performance could no longer be described as dazzling. It was a miraculous existence. Which prime could survive in the hands of a great emperor? Jun Xiaoyaro might not be able to kill a great emperor even if he reached the quasi-immortal level, let alone a great emperor, let alone a great emperor. Thinking of this, the quasi-immortal level experts were somewhat tempted. At this moment, an indifferent voice sounded. I disagree. The newcomer was dressed in green with a pair of ancient green wings on his back. It was the Fufeng of Gojosian. Fufeng of Gojosian. Luo Xiangling frowned. Luo Xiangling also knew more or less about the desolate border. She knew that Prince Baian, the Blood Emperor, and the others were plotting against Jun Xiaoyao. There was definitely someone behind them. Luo Xiangling suspected that it might be the Fufeng of Gojosian. However, because there was no clear evidence, Luo Xiangling didn't say anything. Fufeng of Gojosian glanced at Luo Xiangling. After seeing how worried Luo Xiangling was about Jun Xiaoyao, his heart sank even more. This brat is really lucky. Forget about Prince Nirvana and his group of trash. Even the great sovereign couldn't take his life. Fufeng of Gojosian said coldly in his heart. However, on the surface, his expression was calm as he smiled at Luo Xiangling. Luo King, I can understand that you cherish talents. However, the matter of the dragon vein is too important. Shouldn't you seriously consider it? Luo Xiangling said expressionlessly, do you think that the current situation is suitable for long-term planning? How could Luo Xiangling not know? Because of him, Fufeng of Gojosian was prejudiced and disgusted with Jun Xiaoyao. He couldn't wait to see Jun Xiaoyao fall. How could he agree to use the dragon vein to save Jun Xiaoyao? For a moment, the situation was in a stalemate. Luo Xiangling looked at Jun Xiaoyao, who was lying on the jade platform with his eyes closed and a pale face. Her sparkling eyes were filled with concern and worry. When Fufeng of Gojosian saw this scene, his emotions couldn't help but fluctuate. He clearly didn't have her for a moment. However, he felt like he was being cheated on. Just as the situation was in a dilemma. Suddenly, an ancient voice sounded. Use the dragon vein to heal him. Hearing this voice, the quasi-immortal level powerhouses present were all shocked. The one who spoke was the immortal king of Ars Academy, who intercepted the Big Dipper Emperor's arrow of rule in the desolate border. The Shanao of Beeked. This was an ancient supreme who had lived for an extremely long time and had an extremely high seniority. Rumor had it that he had lived for several eras and had seen the vicissitudes of the world. It could be said that even quasi-immortal level powerhouses like Fufeng of Gojosian couldn't compare to the Shanao of Beeked. That was just a younger brother. No, he wasn't even a younger brother. He could probably be the grandson of the grandson of the grandson. It was precisely because the Shanao of Beeked had a long lifespan that he could protect Ars Academy for several eras. This experience and this contribution made the Shanao of Beeked have an unparalleled status in Ars Academy. Even the other ancient supreme powerhouses of Ars Academy respected the Shanao of Beeked very much. Senior Shanao of Beeked, isn't this a bit inappropriate? The dragon vein is very important. Fufeng of Gojosian braced himself and said. Even if he was a quasi-immortal level powerhouse, he still had to call the Shanao of Beeked Senior. Unless Fufeng of Gojosian could break through and become a true immortal king. Otherwise, he would always be inferior to the Shanao of Beeked. No need to say more. He's very important to our world. The Shanao of Beeked's voice carried an unquestionable feeling. The Shanao of Beeked is indeed wise. Luo Xiangling revealed a joyful expression. Her identity was special. She was also the only person in Ars Academy who didn't need to call the Shanao of Beeked Senior. Then let's do as the Shanao of Beeked Senior says. Seeing this, the other quasi-immortal level powerhouses also said. Since the Shanao of Beeked agreed, they naturally went with the flow. After the matter was decided, they quickly took action. The quasi-immortal level powerhouses worked together and started to set up a formation. They wanted to extract the dragon vein and put it into Jun Xiaoyao's body. They wanted to nourish him and heal his serious injuries. Seeing this, the Fufeng of Gojosian left with a cold expression. About 7 days later, the formation was set up. Jun Xiaoyao was in the center of the formation. The quasi-immortal level powerhouses started to extract the dragon vein. Instantly, the entire Ars Academy trembled violently. The ground shook and the mountains shook. The ground cracked open, and spirit chi surged. What's happening? What's going on? I feel that the spirit chi between heaven and earth is rapidly decreasing. Prodigies in every corner of Ars Academy cried out in surprise. Ars Academy was located on the dragon vein. That was the place where the fate of the foreign world gathered. It was a 1 in a million blessed land. Ars Academy was able to nurture so many heroes. It was also thanks to the dragon vein. The dragon vein provided a huge amount of spirit chi for those prodigies to cultivate. But now, the spirit chi of heaven and earth was flowing away. The dragon vein was being extracted and was going to be absorbed into Jun Xiaoyao's body. If it were any other prodigy, they would not be able to accept this majestic energy. But if it was the chaotic body, then it was fine. He could completely absorb it. After all, it was one of the top 3,000 constitutions. If he didn't even have this ability, he would not be worthy of the chaotic body's title of invincible. Roar. A dragon's roar sounded in the sky above Ars Academy. The golden dragon vein was extracted and floated in the void. After such a long time, the dragon vein naturally gave birth to a spirituality. It was naturally unwilling to be absorbed and refined by someone. Saving Xiaoyao is your destiny. Luo Xiangling controlled the formation eye and suppressed the dragon vein with the other quasi-immortal level powerhouses, absorbing it into Jun Xiaoyao's body. Roar. The dragon vein was rolling and roaring. Magic power waves shook heaven and earth, and various laws appeared. As the dragon vein of a world, its strength was also boundlessly powerful. But there were several quasi-immortal level powerhouses here, and there was also a formation set up in advance to suppress it. No matter how strong the dragon vein was, it couldn't escape, let alone cause any trouble. In the void, endless formation diagrams appeared and pressed down on the dragon vein, causing it to shrink. In the end, it seemed to have shrunk into a golden python and was pressed into Jun Xiaoyao's body. In an instant, Jun Xiaoyao's body shone with a golden light. The terrifying wounds on his body began to heal quickly, and in Jun Xiaoyao's sleeping subconscious, a faint light of consciousness appeared. I finally got the dragon vein. Everything is going according to plan. Chapter 10-11. All of this was just a scheme that Jun Xiaoyao had thought of at the last minute. When he came to the Ars Academy previously, he had paid attention to this foreign domain's dragon vein. At that time, he had already planned to think of a way to take the dragon vein into his inner universe. Not only could he benefit from it, he could also let the foreign domain have one less dragon vein and one less method to nurture prodigies. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? However, it was obviously not that simple to obtain the dragon vein. First, he had to show his value. Jun Xiaoyao's performance in the desolate border was already a miracle. It was enough to prove his value. Secondly, he had to be in danger before he had a reason to obtain the dragon vein. It was precisely because of this that Jun Xiaoyao chose to bear the Big Dipper Emperor's attack, so that he would be severely injured. In fact, Jun Xiaoyao was also gambling. After all, not everyone dared to face the Great Emperor's attack head-on. If he was not careful, he might really die. If that happened, there would be no medicine for regret. Fortunately, Jun Xiaoyao had condensed the physical body law, and his physical strength had reached a new level. That was why he could barely withstand this attack. Of course, it was because he had taken the Great Emperor's attack. In fact, it was just a move that had been weakened by many times. After all, 99% of the power had been blocked by the Ars Academy's Shanao of Beach. No wonder everyone wants to become a great emperor. The Great Emperor's ability to create clouds and rain with a flip of his hand is indeed desirable. Jun Xiaoyao thought silently in his mind. However, to him, becoming a great emperor was inevitable. In fact, it was not even the end. I've already obtained the dragon vein. Next is to recover from my injuries. There's also Luo Xiangling. If it weren't for her fighting, I might not have obtained the dragon vein so quickly. Luo Xiangling had indeed helped Jun Xiaoyao a lot. In the future, if possible, Jun Xiaoyao did not mind completely subduing Luo Xiangling. In the following period of time, Jun Xiaoyao had been nurturing his injuries. In fact, relying on his strong physical body and blood qi, coupled with the divine spirit indestructible technique, etc., Jun Xiaoyao would be able to fully recover in no time. However, in order to avoid arousing suspicion, Jun Xiaoyao still slowly recovered. In addition, Luo Xiangling had been taking care of Jun Xiaoyao. To be served by such a beauty was a top-notch treatment that was hard to come by for ordinary people. After all, who was qualified to be served by a pseudo-immortal rank expert? That was simply impossible. That was just wishful thinking. Even martial emperors could not easily make quasi-emperors submit and order them around like servants. Perhaps in the face of love, no matter how strong a woman was, she was still just a woman. And during this period of time, the entire foreign territory was also filled with news related to Jun Xiaoyao. He was someone who could shake the world in the immortal domain and was revered by countless people. He could even enjoy the attention of tens of thousands of people in the other side, tens of thousands of gazes filled with respect. Jun Xiaoyao was probably the only one capable of such a feat throughout the ages. Meanwhile, the entire foreign land was in an uproar because of Jun Xiaoyao's deeds. In one of the 10 great foreign provinces, the demonic barbarian Great Province, a big piece of news spread out. The matchmaking convention of the 5 Tushan princesses was about to be held. This news immediately swept through the 10 great provinces. Although there was news before, the time was not confirmed. Now, it was completely confirmed that it would be held in 3 months. This was undoubtedly a big piece of news, causing many young creatures in the foreign land to be extremely excited and eager to give it a try. After all, everyone was an old pervert. Moreover, this time, it was not just a beauty, but a total of 5. This was 5 times the joy. Of course, many people knew their own limits. The 5 princesses of Tushan had noble statuses and were even more picky. Not to mention being favored by all 5 princesses. To be able to make one of them take a second look, one was definitely a dragon or phoenix among men, 1 in 10,000. As for being favored by all 5 of them, there should not be such a person in the foreign land. Because if they said it out loud, they would be beaten. As the news spread out, many geniuses were making preparations. For a matchmaking convention of this level, geniuses below the royal family did not even have the qualifications to participate. Even the royal family geniuses were only going to watch the show. After all, how could the princesses of the royal family easily take a fancy to the royal family geniuses? Only the geniuses of the top royal family and above were qualified to fight for and win their favor. Hey, do you think Lord War God will participate in the matchmaking convention? I heard that the 2 princesses of Tushan, Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chun Chun, are closer to Lord War God. With Lord War God's talent and strength, it's definitely more than enough to marry a princess. Do you think the 5 of them will? That's absolutely impossible. Even Lord War God can't do it. Let's not talk about the other princesses first. How picky are they? Even Tushan won't agree easily, right? Even if they agree, can Lord War God bear it? I heard that the Tushan Fox clan's desires are quite. Many people were also discussing Jun Xiaoyao. After all, Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chun Chun were indeed very close to Jun Xiaoyao. That's interesting. After all, there are many geniuses who have their eyes on the Tushan 5 beauties, such as the Scarlet Owl clan. That Kai Hongyu is quite persistent. He didn't have the right to pursue the Tushan princess before, but now he's reached the top. It's all because of that ancestor of his clan. Otherwise, how could it be possible? This matchmaking convention will definitely be very interesting. Many geniuses were looking forward to it. Even if they knew that they couldn't win the favor of the Tushan 5 beauties, it was still good to watch the show. The Great Barbarian Continent. As the name suggested, it was a place where many demon races lived. Apart from the Tushan clan, there were many other races living here. For example, the Evil Dragon clan, the Fallen Demonic Phoenix clan, the Exotic Taoist clan, the Snake clan, and other races all lived here. Apart from that, there was another clan. It was the Scarlet Owl clan. Previously, the Scarlet Owl clan was only one of the top 10 royal clans. However, because of the ancestor of their clan, the Scarlet Owl clan's king, broke through and became an immortal king. Therefore, their clan ascended and became a quasi-emperor clan. All of a sudden, their status and reputation rose. More importantly, the Scarlet Owl king had once fought with the immortal region's white-robed divine king, Jun Wuhui, who guarded the border. This caused the clan's reputation to soar, and they were even catching up with some of the emperor clans. Currently, the Scarlet Owl clan had a high status and a strong sense of existence in the demonic barbarian continent. At this moment, in the depths of the Scarlet Owl clan's ancestral land, a handsome man dressed in crimson golden armor with crimson wings on his back and a head of crimson hair that resembled flames slowly stepped out. Flames lingered around his body, condensing into various crimson-colored demonic birds that resembled crows. It was his true form, the Scarlet Owl bird, an ominous bird that was born in a fire. He was also one of the leading figures of the younger generation of the Scarlet Owl clan, Kai Hongyu. His younger brother was Kai Lingkong, who was killed by Jun Xiaoyao in the world of divine ruins. Previously, Kai Hongyu had been in seclusion, becoming the last disciple of the Scarlet Owl King and receiving training. Now, he had come out of seclusion, and his cultivation level was also at the supreme stage. In the Boundary Emperor clans, it was rare to see a supreme stage young prodigy. From this, one could see Kai Hongyu's talent and how much the Scarlet Owl King valued him. The matchmaking convention has begun. Kai Hongyu looked into the distance with his hands behind his back. He had come out of seclusion after hearing the news. I've already comprehended a profound change in the soul book, mastered the ancestral skill, and reached the supreme stage. I even have the immortal king as my master. Now, do I have the right to ask for her hand in marriage? Kai Hongyu muttered to himself with a cold look in his eyes. Previously, he had gone to Tushan to ask for her hand in marriage, but he was humiliated in return. That was because he was not powerful enough at that time, and he only had a top-tier royal clan behind him. When he went to ask for her hand in marriage, he was rejected at the door without even seeing the faces of the 5 princesses of Tushan. That could be said to be an eternal humiliation in Kai Hongyu's heart. However, he had undergone a qualitative transformation now, and he even had the Scarlet Owl King as his master and backer. Even the immortal emperor clans would treat the immortal kings with respect and would not offend them easily. Kai Hongyu was filled with confidence. 5 Tushan beauties, you ignored me back then. Now, I'm going to defeat all my opponents in the matchmaking convention and completely conquer you. Chapter 10-12. Kai Hongyu had made up his mind to perform well at the matchmaking convention. Let the Tushan 5 beauties see him in a different light. He felt that he already had the ability to do so. Of course, Kai Hongyu was not the only one who had his eyes on the Tushan 5 beauties. The other quasi-emperor clans and monarch clans all had prodigies making preparations. Some of the monarch clans were even close to the ultimate monarch clans. The prodigies of those monarch clans were obviously very powerful. There were even rumors that a few of the 7 minor emperors would also appear at the matchmaking convention to watch the ceremony. For a time, the Great Demonic and Barbarian Continent became the most eye-catching place among the 10 great continents of the foreign territory. Many prodigies from the entire Great Demonic and Barbarian Continent also entered one after another. However, there was one place that was still rarely visited. It was a place called the Fiend Tomb. It was a rather famous dangerous forbidden area in the Great Demonic and Barbarian Continent. In fact, almost every great continent of the foreign territory had more or less 1 or 2 such forbidden areas. For example, the Heavenly Tomb in the Great Continent of Heavenly Tomb. The Heavenly Barrier and Blood Abyss in the Great Demonic Abyss Continent were the same. It was rumored that this Fiend Tomb had once sealed a peerless demon. Many powerful cultivators had come here to investigate, but in the end, they all died. Therefore, many opportunities were left behind, and it became a treasure land. And now, in the region of the Demon Sealing Tomb, a figure that should not have appeared there had appeared. It was a handsome young man with slightly dark skin. It was Yun Xiaohe. After leaving Tushan Wanwan, he did not return to Tushan. Because without Tushan Wanwan, he did not even have the right to step into Tushan. There must be some kind of secret in my body. I want to uncover it. I want to let Miss Wanwan know that I am not weaker than that chaos body. Yun Xiaohe gritted his teeth and muttered to himself. He had also experienced countless dangers all the way from the Styx River continent to the Great Demonic and Barbarian continent. But he had overcome them one by one. Because Yun Xiaohe had an obsession in his heart. He couldn't watch the goddess who had saved him become another man's plaything. God knew that during his time in the Ars Academy, he sent Tushan Wanwan to Jun Xiaoyao's residence every day. That feeling was simply heart-wrenching. It was as if he had become a cuckold. Although he was just a groom beside Tushan Wnwan. As Yun Xiaohe went deeper into the demon-sealing grave, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was calling out to him. Come back quickly. There were all kinds of dangers in the fiend-sealing tomb. They were either strange incomplete arrays or dangerous demonic creatures. But the strange thing was, Yun Xiaohe bypassed those strange broken formations under the guidance of the unseen forces. As for those demonic creatures, there were even supremes among them. However, when they saw Yun Xiaohe, they either fled in panic or bowed down while trembling, not daring to offend him at all. Yun Xiaohe's face lit up. I am indeed the chosen one. Yun Xiaohe clenched his fists in excitement. He seemed to have already seen Tushan Wnwan looking at him with surprise and admiration. Tushan Wnwan was a warrior, and she liked strong men. So far, Jun Xiaoyaro was the only one who had completely conquered her. Thinking of this, Yun Xiaohe's eyes turned cold. He continued to go deeper. A few days later, he really entered the depths of the fiend-sealing grave. There was a large tomb with an entrance. This was already an extremely deep place. Yun Xiaohe entered it. He found that there were many murals in it. Yun Xiaohe saw one of the murals. It was a large group of foxes worshipping a black fox standing on the peak of a mountain. And behind that black fox, there were 10 tails. This is, Yun Xiaohe was shocked. Wasn't the black fox the lowest and most humble race among the Tushan fox clan? They had always been discriminated against by the other fox clans. And what was with these 10 tails? Among the Tushan fox clan, the noblest bloodline was only the 9-tailed one. For a moment, Yun Xiaohe's breathing quickened. He found that the black fox's eyes were very similar to the pair of fox eyes that contained the power of destruction in his subconscious. Those eyes of destruction were staring at him. Yun Xiaohe also found that the birthmark on his abdomen began to burn. It seemed to be a hexagonal mark. Yun Xiaohe suppressed the excitement in his heart and went deep into the tomb. Finally, he saw it. In the deepest part of the tomb, there was a huge black fox statue. And in the mouth of the black fox statue, there was a pitch-black wheel. There were patterns engraved on it that looked like 10 fox tails. An unparalleled power was surging. Boom! The pitch-black wheel released endless black light of destruction. Yun Xiaohe was instantly drowned. He felt as if his body was being disintegrated. Every cell was being injected with energy. At the same time, in his consciousness, the pair of fox eyes that were filled with the destructive demonic intent appeared again. This time, it fully manifested. It was a black fox that was completely black, branded with destructive demonic patterns, and had 10 tails on its back. The 10 tails seemed to cover the sky and were extremely vast. Who are you? Yun Xiaohe asked. Who am I? Haha, the 10-tailed black fox spoke in human language. I am you. Boom. In an instant, Yun Xiaohe and the 10-tailed black fox looked at each other. All kinds of memories flooded into his mind. The 10-tailed black fox of destruction, the taboo existence of the bloodline mutation of the Tushan fox race. One of the former 6 kings of destruction, it controlled the forbidden weapon of destruction, the 10-tailed sky plate. I'm the 10-tailed black fox of destruction? Yun Xiaohe himself found it unbelievable. Those were the 6 kings of destruction in doomsday myths. And he was just a lowly and insignificant person. It was absolutely difficult to connect the two. But now, fate was like this. After a brief moment of daze, Yun Xiaohe was ecstatic. He could feel that his bloodline strength was awakening. His strength was soaring with every breath. This was not a power that he cultivated, but a power that belonged to him stored in the 10-tailed sky plate. Haha, that's great. Now, I'm finally worthy of Miss Wanwan. Yun Xiaohe roared excitedly. No, not just that. With my identity and bloodline power, not to mention one, even 5 of them together is not impossible. Yun Xiaohe's eyes lit up. Once a person had strength, they would start to inflate. The lower their identity, the more inflated they would be. Yun Xiaohe was a typical example. He did not want only Tushan Wanwan. He wanted all 5 of them. Rumble. The entire fiend-sealing tomb was shaking. Then, a ray of black light suddenly shot into the sky and turned into a black hexagram mark. Many of the foreign creatures noticed this. That's a dark hexagram. Another king of annihilation has awakened. Could it be that in this era, the 6 kings of destruction in doomsday myths will all appear? A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The dark hexagram appeared again, stirring up monstrous waves. Hurry up and find him. We must find this king of destruction, a monarch race figure shouted. On the other side, in the demon abyss state, the forbidden land of eternity, under the heavenly barrier blood abyss. In a stone coffin, a hazy blood mist was surging, and a beautiful figure could be vaguely seen within it. 5th king, that fox has also awakened. It's time to go out for a walk. 1st king, I'll be able to see you soon. This charming and beautiful figure let out a bone-chilling laugh. On her full chest, a black hexagram mark was incomparably clear and deep. Chapter 10:13. The dark hexagram illuminated the heavens, representing the awakening of another world destruction king. This undoubtedly stirred up great waves in the foreign realm again. Many people believed that the great era had arrived, that the 6 kings would all appear. The doomsday legend would truly descend, become reality. In the previous great eras, even though there had been world destruction kings who appeared before. However, there had never been 6. There would always be a few missing. And now, in this great era, 3 darkness kings awakened one after another. This was undoubtedly the omen of the Doomsday Legend's complete descent. Heh, this really is interesting. The great era is about to descend, so it's time to go out and move around, show off my presence. A figure flew out from one of the monarch tribes. His entire body was shrouded in golden radiance, as if a young deity was walking in the mortal world. When someone saw this figure, they couldn't help but cry out in surprise. That is Anlan's Emperor clan's prince, even he has come out. Many people were shocked. Anlan Emperor clan, one of the foreign realm's famous immortal emperor clans. Their clan's immortal king, Anlan, with an Anlan spear, his name shook the eternal spacetime. Prince Anlan was also one of the foreign realm's 7 small emperors. Previously, he had always been sleeping and cultivating. Now that he woke up, it was as if a young deity had appeared in the world, his radiance resplendent. On the other side, in an emperor clan's ancestral land. In an expanse of heavenly flowers, golden lotuses surging from the ground. A woman appeared, dressed in a lush green long dress. Behind her was a large tree that towered into the sky, swaying with dandelion-like seeds. That was shockingly a demonic cattail tree. Meanwhile, the woman was precisely the demonic cattail clan's Physique heavenly girl. She was also one of the 7 small emperors. I wonder if that primal chaos realm will participate in the matchmaking assembly. We still need to handle our relationship with him properly. After all, even his followers are world destruction kings. There's also Prince Mo Jie. It really is tragic, actually ending in such a manner. Physique heavenly girl was muttering. Previously, Pu Yarrow and Jun Xiaoyaro had a conflict, and he was casually killed by Jun Xiaoyaro in Desolate Border. Even though Pu Yarrow was the pride of heaven in the demonic cattail clan, he wasn't the core. Thus, the demonic cattail clan didn't need to completely offend Jun Xiaoyaro for a single Pu Yarrow. Even the 7 small emperors appeared, heading to demonic and barbarian great provinces matchmaking assembly. The entire foreign territory's atmosphere became fiery hot. Meanwhile, at Tu Mountain at the center. However, it was very calm. However, the entire Tushan Mountain was decorated with lanterns and streamers to prepare for the matchmaking convention. At this moment, in a pavilion on the peak of Tushan Mountain, 2 peerless figures stood there. One of the women was wearing a long dress with flowing sleeves. Her figure was slender and light, as flawless as a jade carving. Her eyebrows were curved, her beautiful eyes were clear, and her nose was straight. Her skin was as white as snow, delicate and flawless. She was the 3rd princess of Tushan, Tushan Xiaoxiao. And by her side, a woman with an extremely domineering figure stood there. Even though she was dressed in a bright red robe, it was difficult to conceal her curvaceous and hot figure. It could be said to be plump and juicy. Her face was charming, and she was so charming that all living beings were enchanting. It was the Tushan first princess, Tushan Yeye. Some parts of her body were also worthy of the title of first princess. If Jun Xiaoyaro were here, he would definitely sigh. Compared to the snake men, who were known for their figures, this one was definitely not inferior. At this moment, Tushan Yeye picked up the wine gourd hanging at her waist and took a big gulp, looking like a big sister. Did you feel that when the 6-point star mark appeared, there was a strange feeling? Tushan Yeye said. There was a slight movement in the bloodline, but what does this have to do with the world destroyer king? Tushan Xiaoxiao was confused. Tushan Yeye shook her head slightly and said, "Let's not talk about this for now. By the way, are those 2 girls still angry?" "Yes, it's all because you called them back. Otherwise, they could have stayed with the man of their dreams for a while longer." Tushan Xiaoxiao pursed her lips and smiled. Chaotic body, Yu Xiaoyaro. His performance at the Desolate Border this time was indeed shocking. Even I am a little interested. Tushan Yeye licked her red lips with her tongue. Big sister is famous for being picky, Tushan Xiaoxiao said. However, this Yu Xiaoyaro reminds me of someone who is about to be forgotten, Tushan Yeye said. The son of God of the immortal region's Jun family, Jun Xiaoyaro, Tushan Xiaoxiao said. Their names were indeed similar. However, they clearly did not think that this chaotic body had anything to do with Jun Xiaoyaro. Apart from the fact that their names were similar, there was no other connection between the two. Let's wait and see if we can find a good husband in this matchmaking convention. After all, our cultivation of the immortal art of love and dream has not improved for a long time. Tushan Yeye sighed softly. The immortal art of love and dream of the Tushan Fox clan required them to find the destined person who could pull the red string of marriage. Therefore, it was extremely troublesome and difficult to cultivate. Big sister, I have always had a question, Tushan Xiaoxiao said. What question? If, and I am saying if, our red string of marriage is tied to the same man, what should we do? Although the probability was minuscule, it did not mean that it was impossible. If that's the case, I won't be modest. You don't have to be modest either. When the time comes, we sisters will be of the same mind. Tushan Yeye giggled. Her smile was extremely charming, and her red lips glowed with a seductive luster. To the Tushan Fox clan, human morals and ethics were nothing at all. Of course, the premise was that such a man really appeared and could pull their red string of marriage. Otherwise, they would not have taken a fancy to the same man at the same time. Tushan Xiaoxiao blinked her clear and beautiful eyes. Was she planning to eat up everything and leave nothing behind? Big sister had been single for so long, and her needs were still strong. Just as the entire foreign land was bustling with noise and excitement because of the Tushan matchmaking convention. Styx River State, Ars Academy's side. In the depths of the purple bamboo forest, there was a secluded courtyard. Luo Xiangling sat beside the bed in the inner room, looking at the man in white lying on the bed. Her eyebrows were like ink, her skin was like snow, and her eyes were like autumn water. Her azure hair was as smooth as water, pouring down to her delicate butt. Looking from afar, she was as bright as the sun rising in the morning. Looking closely, she was as bright as the waves of a lotus flower. Just by sitting there, she was like an extremely beautiful painting. During this period of time, she kept staring at Jun Xiaoyaro, afraid that something would happen to him. But fortunately, Jun Xiaoyao's injuries were recovering very smoothly. Luo Xiangling looked at Jun Xiaoyao's hazy and handsome face, and her eyes were a little absent-minded. How many years had she been single for? She couldn't remember at all. To her, love and love in the human world were all things that were extremely distant from her. She was indeed a high and mighty quasi-immortal king, but she was also very pure. She had always stayed in Ars Academy and almost never came into contact with anyone. But Jun Xiaoyao's appearance caused a ripple in her heart that had been silent for a long time. Looking at him, Luo Xiangling couldn't help but reach out her jade-like hand and gently stroke the outline of Jun Xiaoyao's cheek. Suddenly, a hand covered her jade-like hand. In the next moment, Luo Xiangling met a pair of eyes that had opened their eyelids. A pair of eyes that were like the night stars gazed deeply at her. Xiangling, sneak attacks are wrong. Luo Xiangling was slightly startled. She was a little uneasy, and her beautiful dimples were indescribably beautiful. Chapter 10:14. She didn't expect that Jun Xiaoyaro would suddenly wake up. And it was such a coincidence. Luo Xiangling wanted to withdraw her hand, but Jun Xiaoyaro held it tightly. You're awake, Luo Xiangling said. Her long eyelashes drooped slightly. She didn't dare to look at Jun Xiaoyao's eyes. What's wrong with me? Luo Xiangling couldn't believe her own expression. She was a high and mighty quasi-immortal, the Luo king of Ars Academy. And Jun Xiaoyaro was only a Ji Zun. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. However, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. If other quasi-immortals were here, they would definitely be stunned. The Luo king, who was usually as cold as water, actually had such a girly attitude. It would simply refresh their understanding. Xiangling, have you been taking care of me these days? Jun Xiaoyaro looked at Luo Xiangling. Her jade hands were soft as if they were boneless, extremely smooth and tender. Only Jun Xiaoyaro had touched them. As for that poor foofing of Gojosian, he didn't even get within 3 feet of Luo Xiangling. It's good that you're fine. I'm relieved. Luo Xiangling calmed her emotions. After all, she was a quasi-immortal, so she still had this bit of control. She didn't want to show her shy and timid appearance in front of Jun Xiaoyao. That would be a bit too embarrassing. Thank you. Jun Xiaoyao stood up, his tone sincere. It wasn't all an act. There was still a bit of sincerity in it. Luo Xiangling was indeed very good to him. Although Jun Xiaoyao's original intention was to find a backer, to hug Luo Xiangling's thigh. But now that things had developed to this point, it seemed that Luo Xiangling was really falling into it. He couldn't stop acting even if he wanted to. Can you let go first? Luo Xiangling's voice was as soft as a mosquito. Although there was no one else here, Luo Xiangling still felt a little shy. Oh, I'm sorry. Jun Xiaoyao loosened his grip. There was a moment of silence between the two. By the way, my injuries? Jun Xiaoyao deliberately asked. It's the Ars Academy's dragon vein, Lu Xiangling said. It's fused into your body. I see. Jun Xiaoyao nodded slightly. He could feel that the foreign dragon vein was being suppressed into his body, nourishing his body. After Jun Xiaoyao, he would bring the foreign dragon vein into the innerverse. In his inner universe, there was still the immortal origin ancestral meridian that he had obtained from the world of divine ruins. This way, the immortal origin ancestral vein and the foreign domain dragon vein were all absorbed into Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe. His inner universe had sufficient spiritual energy and could flourish and develop even more vigorously. It was also very beneficial to his own cultivation. You're really amazing. You've made amazing military achievements in the desolate border. Later, the Academy will hold a conferring banquet for you, Luo Xiangling said. It's just some small achievements. Compared to making contributions in the desolate border and shaking the world with my name, I'd rather stay in Xiangling's bamboo grove, discussing the Tao and drinking tea every day. Isn't that wonderful? Jun Xiaoyao said casually. Luo Xiangling smiled, and her eyes revealed a touch of joy that even she herself didn't notice. She liked having Jun Xiaoyao by her side. Then, Luo Xiangling seemed to have thought of something, and her expression became a little more serious. Xiaoyao, tell me, is the Fufeng of Gojosian behind Prince Haigen and the others? Jun Xiaoyao's eyes flashed slightly. It seemed that Luo Xiangling had also noticed. He hesitated for a moment and didn't say anything. Tell me, is it true? If it's true, I'll have to remind him. Otherwise, I'll have to ask the Shanao of Beach to give him a warning. Luo Xiangling's tone was rarely solemn. Obviously, she was very concerned about this matter. Jun Xiaoyao also knew that the Shanao of Beach was the immortal king who made the move. However, he shook his head slightly and said, I know it might be the Fufeng of Gojosian, but there's no need to find him. Why? Luo Xiangling didn't understand. Because I don't want to implicate you for my sake. No matter what, the Fufeng of Gojosian is, after all, a quasi-immortal. His status is the same as yours. If you offend him, you'll be in trouble. You like quiet and don't like noise. I don't want you to be disturbed because of me. Jun Xiaoyao's tone was calm and sincere. Luo Xiangling was slightly stunned when she heard this. Jun Xiaoyao was too considerate of her, wasn't he? In order to not disturb her peace, he didn't mind at all even if he was being targeted and hostile. Which woman could resist this kind of care and gentleness? It could only be said that Jun Xiaoyao's acting skills and flirting skills had reached the peak of perfection. Don't even talk about tricking Luo Xiangling, a woman who looked strong but had a pure heart. Even those mature women with deep experience and extraordinary vision would be seduced to the point of no return. Seeing Luo Xiangling blushing unconsciously, Jun Xiaoyao was slightly stunned. Luo Wang, this beautiful old auntie, blushing was also a little cute. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes dimmed. Suddenly, he stepped forward and gently hugged Luo Xiangling. Luo Xiangling was completely stunned. Her originally soft and supple body was now extremely stiff and rigid. Only the heavens knew that this was the first time she was so close to someone and hugging each other since she gained consciousness. She couldn't think at all. She just let Jun Xiaoyao hug her in a daze. Her quasi-immortal level strength seemed to have disappeared without a trace. She couldn't summon any strength at all. At this moment, She was like a real little woman. Zhang Xiaoyaro moved his mouth close to Luo Xiangling's white ear and said softly, I know that during this period of time, Xiangling, you must have put in a lot of effort to heal my injuries. In addition, I also know that you have your own past and secrets. I won't force you to tell me. But if you need to talk and share one day, I will be a listener. These gentle words made Luo Xiangling's bones go soft. She did have her own past and secrets that she had never told anyone. Zhang Xiaoyaro was very smart. He knew this, but he didn't mind her hiding it and didn't force her to say it. This gentleness. This understanding. What man could do that? Luo Xiangling only responded softly, still letting Zhang Xiaoyaro hug her. The atmosphere was a little ambiguous. Zhang Xiaoyaro even suspected that if he were to push her down just like that. Of course, Zhang Xiaoyaro didn't do that. How much courage did it take to push down a quasi-immortal level existence? The most important thing was, there was still someone in Zhang Xiaoyao's heart that he couldn't let go of. Someone was still worried about him in the immortal region. Zhang Xiaoyaro let go of his arm. Luo Xiangling lost her support and suddenly felt a sense of emptiness in her heart, but she didn't show it. Oh right, did anything happen in the foreign domain recently? Zhang Xiaoyaro asked. Another king of destruction has awakened, Luo Xiangling said. Oh. Zhang Xiaoyaro raised his eyebrows slightly. Could it be that little horse driver? If so, then it would be interesting. In addition, Tushan seems to be holding some kind of matchmaking convention, Luo Xiangling said. Matchmaking convention. Zhang Xiaoyaro nodded slightly. Previously, Tushan Wanwan and Tushan Chun had also told him that they wanted him to go. At this moment, the long-awaited mechanical voice of the system sounded in Zhang Xiaoyao's mind. Ding, congratulations to the host, the new check-in location has been refreshed. Please sign in at the Tushan matchmaking convention. Zhang Xiaoyaro was a little surprised. What kind of treasure could he sign in at a place like the matchmaking convention? Chapter 10:15. In fact, Zhang Xiaoyaro didn't feel anything about this matchmaking convention. He wasn't interested in the 5 princesses of Tushan either. His only plan was to see if he could meet Kai Hongyu at the convention. He wanted to find a way to snatch his soul book. Now, since he had activated the check-in, Zhang Xiaoyaro had to attend the convention even more. Why, Xiaoyao, are you interested in this? Luo Xiangling said when she noticed the slight change in Zhang Xiaoyao's expression. Her sparkling eyes stared at Zhang Xiaoyao. Obviously, she misunderstood Zhang Xiaoyao's reaction and thought that he had some thoughts about the matchmaking convention. I can join in the fun at this matchmaking convention, Zhang Xiaoyaro said. Xiaoyao, are you interested in those foxes? Luo Xiangling's tone had a trace of inexplicable bitterness. Her expression was extremely cute. Coupled with Luo Xiangling's supreme status as the Luo king, there was a strange kind of cuteness in contrast. What if I say yes? Zhang Xiaoyaro looked at Luo Xiangling and suddenly had the thought of teasing her. If outsiders saw Zhang Xiaoyaro teasing the Luo king like this, their eyes would most likely pop out. Are all men like this? Or, I'm not as beautiful as them. Luo Xiangling's last sentence was very soft and only she could hear it. Looking at Luo Xiangling's expression, Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled. Don't worry, I'm just going to join in the fun. Xiangling, can you come along? You can go if you want. You don't have to drag me along. Luo Xiangling lowered her eyelashes. Indeed, what was her relationship with Zhang Xiaoyaro now? Even if Zhang Xiaoyaro participated in the matchmaking convention and married the princess of Tushan, it would be natural. That was to be expected. She had no reason to interfere, right? However, Luo Xiangling's heart was filled with jealousy and jealousy. Looking at the subtle changes in Luo Xiangling, he seemed to be worried about personal gains and losses. Zhang Xiaoyaro suddenly thought. Did he overdo it and make Luo Xiangling too immersed in the role? After that, the news of Zhang Xiaoyaro waking up spread throughout the Ars Academy. The entire Ars Academy was in an uproar. Some of the students of the academy worshipped him as if he were a god. After all, this was someone who had survived under the hands of a great emperor. Many people wanted to meet Zhang Xiaoyaro, but they were all rejected. Zhang Xiaoyaro stayed in Luo Xiangling's residence, enjoying the peace and quiet. It didn't take long for the Ars Academy to hold a celebratory banquet for Zhang Xiaoyao's conferment. Apart from the few bloodlines of the Emperor clan that they had enmity with, almost most of the Emperor clans sent people to congratulate and send gifts. After all, Zhang Xiaoyao's identity was too extraordinary now. There was no need to talk about his talent and identity. He also had the support of the Shanao of Beach, the Luo king, and others from the Ars Academy. There was also a mysterious immortal standing behind him. Of course, that was the evil spirit of the gods in disguise. Only Zhang Xiaoyaro himself knew. Now, Zhang Xiaoyaro was among the younger generation of the foreign territory. He was already an absolute top existence that no one dared to provoke. Zhang Xiaoyaro liked peace and quiet, so he didn't attend the banquet. But no one criticized him, nor did they think that Zhang Xiaoyaro was acting like a big shot. Instead, they thought that this was in line with the identity of a war god. In the small residence in the purple bamboo forest, Zhang Xiaoyaro let the little divine demon out of the inner universe for some fresh air. Big brother, you actually cultivated an inner universe, and there are so many good things inside, right? The divine demon stared at Zhang Xiaoyaro with a face full of shock. Not to mention that he had created such a huge inner universe at the supreme level. Little Yi was completely stunned by the treasures inside. The world tree, the celestial tree, the spring of life, the immortal source ancestral vein, the foreign dragon vein. The treasures in Zhang Xiaoyao's inner universe made even a descendant of a great emperor like Little Yi exclaim in admiration. That's nothing. Now that we're in the foreign territory, I can only wrong you for the time being and tell others that you're my captive, Zhang Xiaoyaro said. Is this the foreign territory? The little divine demon observed its surroundings. It could also feel that the foreign territory's laws were extremely different from the celestial realm. Zhang Xiaoyaro let the little divine demon explore on its own. At this moment, Zhang Xiaoyaro suddenly felt something. It was as if there were many voices surrounding his ears. All kinds of prayers, begging, and sacrifices. What's going on? Zhang Xiaoyaro carefully investigated. He discovered that the source of the voices was the seed of faith in the inner universe. Zhang Xiaoyaro hadn't paid attention to the seed of faith for a long time, allowing it to develop on its own. But now, the seed of faith was actually twice as big as before. On the surface, the myriad spirit patterns appeared. There was even a faint heartbeat coming from the seed of faith. It was like a heart or an embryo. Interesting. Zhang Xiaoyaro discovered that this 9-star reward wasn't that simple. Those begging prayers spread out from the endless light spots around the seed of faith. That was the power of faith of all living beings. After not carefully investigating for a while, there were actually so many more. They were densely packed like stars in the sky. Even Zhang Xiaoyaro was surprised. Wasn't Tuoba Yu working too hard? It seems that he's in trouble. Hearing those prayers, Zhang Xiaoyaro thought to himself. Tuoba Yu was a chess piece that he had casually placed when he first came to the foreign territory. Tuoba Yu spread his faith among the slaves. Fei Qingxue spread her faith among the royal family. But now, it seemed that Tuoba Yu had encountered a lot of trouble. This could be seen from the despairing prayers. Zhang Xiaoyaro had previously signed in for the ability to illuminate the heavens. But his current cultivation base wasn't enough to project it into the heavens. So he could only make a trip there in person. It's time to lay my cards on the table. I'd like to see who dares to obstruct me from obtaining the power of faith. Zhang Xiaoyao's eyes revealed a cold light. He had a hunch that this seed of faith would definitely give him a great surprise in the future and become an important help to him. Therefore, the expansion of the Church of Destiny couldn't be stopped. Little Yi, do you want to go out for a walk? Zhang Xiaoyaro smiled. Sure, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious. I want to carefully understand the situation in the foreign territory. The little divine demon nodded repeatedly. By the way, call Xiangling too. Zhang Xiaoyaro thought. Although his status was high enough, his strength wasn't considered top-notch in the foreign territory. So he still needed to call Luo Xiangling. He immediately went to find Luo Xiangling. What? Let's go out for a walk together. Luo Xiangling was obviously very surprised. That's right, Xiangling, you seem to be an otaku. It's boring to stay in your own residence all the time. Why don't you accompany me for a walk? Jun Xiaoyaro smiled slightly. Otaku? Luo Xiangling obviously didn't understand the meaning of this word. However, her face secretly turned red. Was this considered going out on a date? A few days later, Jun Xiaoyaro wore a ghost mask and left Ars Academy with Luo Xiangling. It wasn't that Jun Xiaoyaro was deliberately keeping a low profile. It was that he was too famous in the foreign territory now. If he didn't hide it, he would be surrounded wherever he went. There was no way he could do anything at all. And just after Jun Xiaoyaro and the others set off, in the state of Heavenly Tomb, a mighty and bloody battle erupted. This battle originated from a lowly slave race called the Black Skin race. And now, the Union of Destiny formed by thousands of slave races in the state of Heavenly Tomb. They were being bloodily suppressed by some royal families. Chapter 1016. On the vast plains of the state of Heavenly Tomb, the setting sun was as red as blood. Looking around, countless corpses were piled up on the plains, forming mountains of corpses. The blood that flowed out gathered into a river of blood that meandered through the mountains of corpses. This was a true mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. It was hard to imagine how many living beings had died on this endless plain. It was definitely more than 1,000,000. At this moment, in a core area of the plain, countless living beings had set up camp here. Looking around, there were the Bloodbone race, the Goblin race, the Oddball race, and the Birdman race. They were all slave races with low status. However, upon closer inspection, the strength of these slave races was not weak. There were many void gods, true gods, heavenly gods, and so on. Although their cultivation did not seem very high, it was indeed very rare for the slave races. Moreover, it was not just one or two who had such cultivation, but most of them. There were more than 1,000 slave races stationed here, and more than 1,000,000 living beings added up. This had indeed formed a force that could not be ignored. At this moment, in the core area, there was a 10,000-foot tall tower. This was a sacrificial tower. Under the tower, a large group of people were gathered together. They were the patriarchs and leaders of the various races. In the center of the crowd stood a young man with muscular arms and a thin waist. He had a well-built body, slightly tanned skin, and a determined face. It was Tuoba Yu of the Black Skin race. Compared to before, the current him was tall and slender, and his eyes were as bright as stars. His body was also emitting an extremely powerful fluctuation. He was a sacred lord. This was a little shocking. One had to know that before this, Tuoba Yu was a nameless junior. The Sacred Lord realm was a realm that he would find difficult to reach in his lifetime. However, in less than a year, Tuoba Yu had broken through to the Sacred Lord realm. The most important thing was naturally that Jun Xiaoyaro had given Tuoba Yu 1,000th of his cultivation talent. In addition, there was also the Dao Heart Demonic Seed Art. Tuoba Yu was the first to obtain the Dao Heart Demonic Seed Art and spread it. The benefits he could obtain were the greatest. Therefore, with the support of these two factors, Tuoba Yu could reach such a terrifying cultivation speed. Of course, he was a sacred lord. Jun Xiaoyaro would have been able to kill Tuoba Yu countless times with just a single thought. Not only him, Jun Xiaoyaro could control the life and death of any living being who cultivated the Dao Heart Demonic Seed Art with a single thought. Unless the person's cultivation was much stronger than Jun Xiaoyao's. During this period of time, Tuoba Yu was also loyal and devoted, wholeheartedly preaching. Because it was the god of fate and creation who had changed his fate, he naturally believed in him fervently. In less than a year, hundreds of thousands of slaves in the Heavenly Tomb state responded to his call and rebelled. The enslaved races of the other continents were also echoing the call. Tuoba Yu was put on a pedestal. He became the leader of the liberation of the slave race. He was known as the holy hero by all the slaves. Most people would definitely become complacent upon receiving such prestige and status. However, Tuoba Yu didn't. Because he knew who had bestowed all of this upon him. Now, Tuoba Yu and the leaders of the various slave races were gathered together for an extremely important meeting. Lord Holy Hero, we can't go on like this. We're no match for the 5 royal tribes. That's right. The 5 royal tribes have mystic venerables and creation supremacies suppressing the rear. We can't win at all. Now that we've suffered heavy casualties, it's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. The patriarchs and leaders of these slave races were chattering away. Previously, Tuoba Yu's expansion had been going smoothly. Because they were the lowliest slave races, they didn't attract much attention. In fact, the high and mighty boundary emperor clans and even emperor clans didn't care about their slave race alliance at all until now. It was like ants. Even if they formed a colony, to humans, it was just a matter of raising a foot and stomping them to death. Therefore, the boundary emperor clans and immortal emperor clans didn't care about the slave races at all. Even the royal tribes generally didn't care. As for the remaining general tribes, they weren't invincible opponents to the slaves who cultivated the Dao Heart demonic seed art. Therefore, Tuoba Yu's journey had been very smooth. However, recently, the 5 royal tribes had suddenly joined forces to attack the alliance of fate of the slave races. When the royal tribes made a move, it was extraordinary. Even if it was a race ranked at the bottom of the 100 royal tribes, the slave races couldn't resist. Moreover, it wasn't just one royal tribe, but 5 royal tribes joining forces. This was a huge blow to the alliance of fate of the slave races led by Tuoba Yu. The two sides weren't in the same dimension at all. It was a blow to the lower dimension. Now, even the leaders of the slave races were a little panicked. Enough. Quiet down first. What's with all this noise? Tuoba Yu frowned and shouted in a low voice. Everyone quieted down. Although Tuoba Yu wasn't very old. As a sage, he already had great prestige among the slave races. He could be said to be above everyone. This matter isn't that simple. Why did the 5 royal tribes suddenly join forces to attack us? Tuoba Yu said. Could there be other reasons? The leader of the goblin race probed. If I'm not wrong, there's someone behind the 5 royal tribes, Tuoba Yu said in a low voice. What? This conjecture shocked the various clan leaders present. Because to them, the royal family was already a godlike existence. Who else could stand behind the royal tribes and order them around? Could it be a quasi-emperor tribe or a true emperor tribe? The leader of the strange Lan race said with a pale face. This made all the leaders present tremble, and their faces were as pale as paper. Not to mention the immortal emperor tribes. Even the quasi-emperor tribes were like gods to the slave races. Heavens, there's an emperor tribe targeting us. Some of the leaders were trembling in fear. That was a high and mighty emperor tribe. They could easily destroy a royal tribe with a single sentence. Dealing with them was easier than stepping on ants. I'm not sure yet, but there's definitely a big shot behind the scenes. Tuoba Yu also felt very troubled. That's right. The 5 royal tribes said that they'll give us 7 days to surrender. Perhaps we'll have a chance to live. At this time, some people who were innately obsequious appeared. Enough. Is that what you're thinking? Beside Tuoba Yu, a beautiful woman with wheat-colored skin and a slim figure shouted coldly. She was Tuoba Yu's sister, Tuoba Lan. But we can't deal with them at all. Many of the leaders had bitter expressions. At this time, Tuoba Yu said, I believe that the God of fate and creation will not abandon us. Next, we'll hold a prayer ceremony and sincerely pray that the God of fate and creation will help us through this difficult time. Tuoba Yu was the first chess piece that Jun Xiaoyaro tricked. He was also the most fervent believer. When faced with such a difficult problem, Tuoba Yu's first thought was to pray to the God of fate and creation. Chapter 1017. This, hearing Tuoba Yu's words, some patriarchs looked at each other and were silent. Although most of the slaves were devout believers in the God of fate and creation. However, some patriarchs knew that the so-called God might be a slightly more powerful person. Now, they were facing the Emperor clan. In their eyes, the Emperor clan was already a godlike existence. Could the illusory God they believed in really help them? Seeing the reaction of some patriarchs, Tuoba Yu's face immediately darkened. What, You don't believe that the God can help us through this difficult time? Do you still remember the first restriction of the alliance of fate? Yes, yes, we must always believe in the God of fate and creation and praise his name devoutly. All the patriarchs lowered their heads and cupped their hands. It's good that you know. Go quickly. Tuoba, you said. Soon, the grand sacrificial ceremony began. Millions of enslaved creatures surrounded the sacrificial tower. They were prostrating themselves in worship. At the same time, many slaves in the other continents were also praying and prostrating themselves on the ground. Because Tuoba Yu was the source of this uprising. If they failed, the other uprisings would naturally die out. These enslaved creatures didn't notice. Their devout faith spread out through the sacrificial tower, turning into an invisible torrent of light spots. It poured into the seed of faith in Jun Xiaoyao's inner universe. Just at about the same time, on the other side of the plains of the tomb state, there was also an army stationed there. It was the army of the 5 royal families. They were very few in number, only about 200,000 in total. They were far from being comparable to the slaves. However, not only were they well equipped, but their cultivation was also not weak. Most importantly, they had many top powerhouses. There were even mystique venerable and divine venerable powerhouses guarding the rear. This was not a war. It was a massacre. In the center of the camp, in the void, there was an incomparably luxurious and huge ship. Just by looking at this ship, one could tell that this was definitely not something that the royal family could possess. At this moment, in the ship, the carved beams and painted rafters were rich in spirit energy, as dense as mist. In the depths, there was a throne. On the throne sat a man. He wore a loose robe, and his skin was as pale as marble. His facial features were very handsome, and his eyes were completely black without any white. They were like 2 black holes, bottomless and without a trace of light. His hair was also very long, hanging down to the ground. His entire person had a very unique and outstanding temperament. Below him stood several figures. There was also a seductive woman in a blood-red dress who was leaning against the man on the throne and feeding him spirit fruits. She was the blood spirit saintess of the blood spirit royal family. The blood spirit royal clan was one of the 5 royal clans. It was conceivable that he could make a saintess serve as his maid. This man's identity and status could be imagined. His background was definitely not small. It's still the emperor's benevolence that gave those slaves 7 days to consider. If it were me, I would have directly annihilated them all. A muscular man with iron-like muscles and blood-red demonic patterns all over his body said. One of his arms was shaped like a blade. It was incomparably sharp. He was a prodigy of the blade-armed Shura clan and one of the prodigies of the 5 royal clans. As for the man on the throne that he addressed as Emperor's son, he chuckled and said indifferently, "With so many creatures, it will take some time to deal with them. This Emperor's son is going to Tushan's matchmaking convention later, so I don't have time to waste here. I need to complete the refinement of my god-devouring ring." As the man spoke, he raised his hand, and a ring appeared in his hand. It was like a black hole that could devour all creatures. When the surrounding prodigies saw this, they all felt a chill run down their spines and hurriedly lowered their heads. Because they knew that this man was not a kind person. He was the god-devouring emperor's son of the god-devouring clan. One of the 7 minor emperors of the foreign realm. The god-devouring clan was rare. Its main body was the extremely rare god-devouring bug. In the ancient era, this clan was known to be able to devour gods. It was one of the few species that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the divine demonic ant, 10 transformations celestial silkworm, archaic emperor butterfly, and other divine insects. This clan was almost extinct in the celestial realm. However, in the foreign realm, they continued to exist and formed the god-devouring clan. And this clan's innate ability was their terrifying devouring power. There were even some king physiques and divine physiques that had been devoured by the god-devouring bugs. This showed how domineering the devouring power of this clan was. And this was also the reason why this emperor's son could become one of the foreign realm's 7 minor emperors. If he wanted to improve his divine weapon, the god-devouring ring, he had to devour all creatures. And it just so happened that the slave race rebelled, and in his eyes, millions of creatures were resources to refine his divine weapon. With his identity as the emperor's son, he could casually call the 5 royal bloodlines to fight for him. What, are you afraid that this emperor's son will devour you? Looking at the prodigies who lowered their heads and trembled slightly, the emperor's son sneered. Of course not. A prodigy braced himself and said, but he was actually extremely afraid. This emperor's son had devoured many prodigies before. What he liked the most was to devour prodigies with special bloodlines and physiques. Don't worry, this emperor's son is not interested in you. As long as you help me kill those slaves and refine the god-devouring ring, you will be rewarded. Thank you, emperor's son. All the prodigies cupped their hands. The blood spirit saintess said as she massaged the emperor's son's shoulders. By the way, emperor's son, I heard that those slaves worship a god called the god of fate and creation. Also, their cultivation base has skyrocketed. It seems to have something to do with that god's technique. Hearing this, the emperor's son shook his head and sneered. The god of fate and creation? What a joke. Who has the audacity to say that they represent fate and creation? I think it's just some quack trying to trick them. When the time comes, we'll kill them all and see if that god they worship will come to save them. The emperor's son did not care at all. It was one thing to be a quack, but to use fate and creation as their names, was that a name that ordinary people could come up with? Once I refine the god-devouring ring, I'll go to the matchmaking convention and see if I can marry 1 or 2 beautiful concubines. That war god chaotic body is really coveted. If I can devour it, I'll definitely become the strongest prodigy in the foreign realm. Unfortunately, it's too difficult to provoke. For the god-devouring bug, the fastest way to evolve was to devour all kinds of bloodlines and physiques. The chaotic body was undoubtedly the most precious tonic. Even a single drop of chaos blood was worth far more than the millions of lives of the slave clan. Unfortunately, the emperor's son could only think about it for the time being. He was not qualified to kill the chaotic body yet. 7 days passed quickly. With the emperor's son behind them, the 5 royal families' army began to surge toward the base of the Alliance of Fate. After praying for 7 days, the slaves were also ready to fight to the death. Just as the war was about to break out, Jun Xiaoyaro and Luo Xiangling appeared in a teleportation array in the heavenly tomb state. Jun Xiaoyaro could control Tuoba Yu and immediately found some information. The 5 royal families are besieging us. So there's someone behind them. Let me see who has the guts to obstruct my plan. Jun Xiaoyao's eyes were deep and cold as he looked at the vast battlefield in the distance.